Chapter 2279. Ignorant child, how dare you lie to me? Householder Qingyuan scolded him angrily. It seemed like he was extremely angry. How could he believe that you could find the feather among the millions of chicken feathers so coincidentally? Without a doubt, you must have done something to it. You put down the feather and calmly said, "Yes, I forged this feather myself." Unexpectedly, you did not try to defend himself. Instead, he openly admitted to it. This made householder Qingyuan unable to vent his anger. Gradually, he restrained himself and said with a displeased expression, "You didn't ask me to do something with sincerity. Instead, you lied. I'm sorry, but I can't help you fulfill your wish." Householder, you are really stupid. You sneered. He picked up the feather and rubbed it between his fingers. "I can create your so-called feather that can change fate by myself. Let me ask you, why would I need to seek the feather that you bestowed upon me under your rules?" You would not be courteous to such a conceited person who liked to pretend to be aloof and virtuous. So he pointed out his true thoughts. Sure enough, householder Qingyuan was furious. He squinted at Yu and said, "Young lad, I will forgive you this once, considering that you killed the Zheng family master. If you dare to speak carelessly again, I will." Yu was not even interested in hearing him out. He interrupted him and said, "I had already decided to leave, but you insisted on helping me with something. Now that you can't do it, you're trying to play tricks on me. Now that you've been exposed, you're angry out of humiliation." He stood up slowly, his eyes filled with disdain. "To be honest, I feel that maintaining the image of the Qingyuan Celestial Venerable is quite tiring. Since you killed the Zheng family master, I won't make things difficult for you. You're on your own now." If you wanted to embarrass him, it would be too easy. In front of all the people who respected him, he beat him up, completely destroying his image as a scholar. However, since he had killed Zheng family master, Yu was too lazy to do so. Ignorant child. Householder Qingyuan slammed the table and stood up. His path master's power was stirred, and he looked like he was about to attack Yu. Yu wore a faint smile. "I advise you not to be rash." As he spoke, he casually lifted the curtains and left the thatched cottage. Layman Qingyuan's face turned livid. After struggling for a moment, he slowly retracted his Tao, Lord's power, and snorted inwardly. "You think I won't dare to attack you just because there are so many people around? You're smart." It was obvious that he had misunderstood Yu's intentions. Yu had asked him not to act rashly because he didn't want him to suffer a beating. He wasn't threatening him with his image. "I'm a dignified layman Qingyuan. Do you think I can't do anything to you?" He couldn't take this lying down. An idea occurred to him. "Didn't you want to ask about the time-fixing compass?" "Sure." "Xiaowan, come in." The boy from before immediately bowed and said respectfully, "What can I do for you, sir?" "Inform the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce to strictly block the information about the time-fixing plate." "Yes." Only a few people knew about the star positioning plate. Householder Qingyuan was one of them. An intelligence department of the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce knew about it. The rest were the super forces of the Nightless Kingdom. Yu was an outsider, so if he wanted to obtain information about the time-fixing plate, he could only do so through the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce. If the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce was locked down, where could Yu find information? "You'll definitely come back and beg me in less than 10 days. Householder Qingyuan felt much better and smiled lightly. But even if Yu really came back to beg him, he wouldn't help him. All he wanted was to vent his anger. After handing over Mie Zheng's letter, Yu arrived at the capital of the Nightless Kingdom. The capital was bustling, and businesses controlled by the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce could be seen everywhere. Among them was the intelligence department. As soon as Yu entered, a white-haired old man welcomed him warmly. "May I ask if you're here to information about the time-fixing plate? The price is negotiable." Su Yu was concise and to the point, skipping the formalities. The white-haired old man's smile deepened. "My young friend, please take a seat." Accompanied by the white-haired old man, Su Yu entered the quiet and secluded backyard. "I'm the shopkeeper of the intelligence department, Yu Xiangdong. I can make decisions on anything other than special information." The shopkeeper implied that he didn't need to consult his boss for information about the time-fixing plate. He could make decisions on his own. "That couldn't be better," Su Yu said calmly. "How much?" Yu Xiangdong was all smiles. 100 million Dao coins. 100 million? Dao coins were different from divine stones, crystals, and other currencies. They were extremely expensive. The Songjing Zodiac Palace that Su Yu had been to might not even have 1 billion Dao coins. Now, a mere piece of information was asking for 100 million Dao coins, which was really expensive. Su Yu took a brief inventory of his assets. Apart from the things that he hadn't sold, he only had 200 or 300 million Dao coins. Su Yu pondered for a moment as he asked for more than half of the Tao coins at once. He could earn more Dao coins, but he had to get the information about the time-fixing plate. Every day that the sinful lady died, the sinful lady palace would have more variables. If he went too late, God knew if the sinful lady palace would still exist. It might collapse like the 7 ultimate civilizations, or it might be annexed by other forces. "Deal," Su Yu said decisively and took out a gold card. Seeing this card, Yu Xiangdong's pupils constricted. The gold card was a money card issued by the Pathmaster Palace with a deposit of more than 500 million. The silver-haired human in front of him was indeed a generous guest. Yu Xiangdong rubbed his palms and said with a smile, "According to the rules of our intelligence business, you pay first, then you give me the information." Information was different from other goods. If it was ordinary goods, they could still snatch the goods back if the guest changed his mind after getting the goods. However, if the guest changed his mind after learning about the information, how could they get it back? Su Yu knew that this was indeed the rule of the intelligence business, so he transferred 100 million Dao coins to the other party with the money card. Yu Xiangdong's heart relaxed, and his mood became much more relaxed. This was a big deal. "Sir, please wait for a moment. I will go to the treasure house to get the relevant information scroll." All the information about the time-fixing plate was sealed in the treasure house. He didn't know the specific content. "Please be quick." Su Yu nodded lightly. Yu Xiangdong strode quickly to the back hall. Unexpectedly, when he reached the middle of the courtyard, a shop assistant walked up quickly and said in a low voice, "Shopkeeper, householder Qingyuan's boy is here." The shopkeeper's face turned solemn, and there was a hint of fear in his eyes. "Where is he?" "In the front yard." "Please enter the back hall quickly." The shopkeeper looked hesitantly at the guest hall where Su Yu was and said, "I will go and receive him personally. You take good care of this young man." After saying that, he left Su Yu behind and hurried to the front yard. In the guest hall of the front yard, the boy was playing with a valuable ornament in the guest hall, leisurely. "Hey, what brings Lord Shaoluan here?" The shopkeeper was all smiles, as if he was addressing the boy as an equal. The boy, who had been obedient and calm in the thatched cottage, had one hand behind his back at the moment, giving off an air of arrogance. As he continued to play with the ornament, he said indifferently, "Of course I am here under the orders of the householder." Chapter 2280. The Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce was so powerful that they did not need to give face to anyone. Only a few top experts and some special people of their civilization could do so. Qin Yuan was not a top expert, but he was definitely a special person. He was the teacher of Princess Qianyu, the second princess who was favored by the king. The Nightless Kingdom had once asked Qin Yuan to be Princess Qian Yu's teacher for a period of time. Even now, Princess Qian Yu still respected Qin Yuan and allowed him to enter her residence freely. Such a person could easily influence the thoughts of the second princess and often see the king. It was evident how important he was. Many people would ask Qing Yuan for help if they wanted to do something. That included the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce. It was all thanks to householder Qing Yuan's recommendation that they were able to take root in the Nightless Kingdom and gain a foothold there. The Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce naturally had to treat him politely. If they made him unhappy and slandered Princess Qianyu, it would be difficult for the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce to move forward. Therefore, when the shopkeeper found out that the boy was here to convey Qing Yuan's message, he treated him cautiously. "What orders do you have?" The boy did not even turn his head and said calmly, "You said that you must seal a piece of information and not sell it for now." The shopkeeper's heart sank. It was just sealing off a piece of information. It wasn't difficult at all. Similar situations were often encountered in the intelligence industry. Some influential people did not want certain information to be leaked. They would pay a high price to ensure that the intelligence industry could not sell certain information. The shopkeeper felt that Qing Yuan's request was easy. He smiled and asked, "May I ask what information you want to seal?" Xiao Wan said calmly, "The star-fixing plate." The shopkeeper's expression became strange when he heard the word. Someone had come to buy it, and Qing Yuan wanted to seal the information? His expression froze, and he asked hesitantly, "When do we execute it?" "Now, immediately," Xiao Wan said firmly. The shopkeeper looked troubled and said honestly, "To tell you the truth, a customer has already bought this information and offered 100 million Dao coins." Xiao Wan rolled his eyes. "What does the customer look like?" The shopkeeper told him the truth. Xiao Wan's face darkened when he heard the description. "Have you sold it to him?" "No." The shopkeeper saw the change in Xiao Wan's expression and immediately said, "Lord Xiao Wan, my customer." Xiao Wan put his hands behind his back and snorted, "He is ungrateful." Householder Qing Yuan helped him out of kindness. But not only did he not appreciate it, he even insulted householder Qing Yuan. "He came to you looking for information about the star positioning compass. You must not give it to him. Insult householder Qing Yuan? How dare you? In the entire Nightless Kingdom, how many people would dare to insult householder Qing Yuan?" That silver-haired human boy really didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. The shopkeeper understood why householder Qing Yuan wanted him to keep the information a secret. However, he said awkwardly, "But he's already paid." Looking at the displeased boy, the shopkeeper immediately had an idea and said, "I'll return the money and cancel this deal." Unexpectedly, the boy said with a smile that was not a smile, "Shopkeeper, you actually let a duck that delivered itself to your doorstep go." The shopkeeper immediately understood the boy's meaning and waved his hand. "No, our Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce has always been based on our reputation. If word gets out that we embezzled someone else's Dao coins, 100 million Dao coins at that, our Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce will definitely suffer heavy losses. If word got out, who would dare to trade with the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce? Haha, shopkeeper, don't worry. This boy has an ordinary background. He came from the declining Heavenly Legacy civilization and only has a lowly family master behind him. He won't be able to do anything. You can rest assured," the boy said confidently. The shopkeeper's eyes shone with a greedy light. From the former Heavenly Legacy civilization? If that was the case, he had no one to rely on in the colored glaze civilization? After thinking for a moment, the shopkeeper made up his mind. He nodded slowly. "I know what to do. Lord Xiao Wan awaits the good news." He returned to the backyard and went to the treasury. He casually took out a piece of information sealed in a jade talisman. A moment later, in the guest hall of the backyard, the shopkeeper cupped his hands with a pleasant expression and said, "My apologies for making you wait for so long." Su Yu frowned slightly. He had indeed waited for a long time. The efficiency of the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce shouldn't be so low. "Have you brought the information?" "Please take a look at your salary." The shopkeeper took out the jade talisman and handed it over with both hands. Su didn't think much of it. He clasped the jade talisman with 2 fingers and was about to take it. Unexpectedly, before his fingers could touch the jade talisman cracked open from the middle. A ball of fluorescent light flew out from the crack, and the jade talisman quickly dimmed. The information sealed in it was all useless. Su was stunned. Before he could understand what was going on, the shopkeeper had already reprimanded him sternly. "Sir, aren't you going too far? Our intelligence department only keeps 1 copy of the information. You destroyed it. How are we going to sell it to others?" Hearing the reprimand, which seemed to have been prepared beforehand, Su immediately understood. The jade talisman probably didn't contain any information about the time-fixing plate, but some other worthless information. Yu Xiangdong wanted to swallow the 100 million Tao coins. What was even more ridiculous was that not only did he covet the 100 million Tao coins, he even tried to frame Su for destroying the jade talisman. It was obvious that he had tampered with it in advance. Su didn't expect that the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce, which was based on its reputation, could do such a thing. His eyes turned cold bit by bit. He said, "You know very well what the truth is. I'll give you 2 choices. First, bring me the information about the time-fixing plate. Second, return the 100 million Tao coins. Don't make a choice that you will regret." Yu Xiangdong sneered, disapproving in his heart. If what little boy Wan said was true, and Su came from the fallen Heavenly Legacy civilization, why would he need to fear him? Yu Xiangdong scolded sternly. "Insolence! You maliciously destroyed the precious information of our intelligence department, and you dare to complain? Let me tell you, that piece of information can be sold to at least 3 more people. In other words, it can be sold for another 300 million. Since you destroyed the jade talisman, you have to compensate 300 million. If you can't pay this debt, I'm sorry, but the intelligence department is planning to leave." Whoosh! The auras of several path masters enveloped the back hall. Yu Xiangdong's face was cold, his face filled with anger. Those who didn't know would really think that Su had destroyed the jade talisman. Not only did the other party not repent, but he became even worse. He wanted Su to pay another 300 million? At this moment, Su was not afraid. He even wanted to laugh. Just based on the path masters in the intelligence department, they were probably not even enough for him to fight with 1 hand. Su was calm and composed. "I'll say the same thing for the last time. Either you send me the information, or you return the Tao coins." Slap! Yu Xiangdong had Su in his grasp. He slammed the table, his face full of righteousness. "It is only right and proper to compensate for the things that have been damaged. Customer, don't think that you can get away with this by acting shamelessly. Someone, bring this customer down for a good talk." They were obviously planning to put Su under house arrest and slowly steal the Tao coins from him. Since things had come to this, Su felt that saying another word was unnecessary. Chapter 2281. Yu Xiangdong sneered, not taking Su's words to heart. Instead, he found it hard to understand how a person who couldn't even understand the situation could have so much wealth. Yu Xiangdong waved his hand behind him with a smile. "I can only ask our guest to reflect on his actions." Behind him, several strong men rushed forward and were about to capture Su. Su's heart skipped a beat, and he left with his space divine technique. The group of people failed to catch him, and they asked Yu Xiangdong, "Shopkeeper, he must have used some kind of space talisman. We should be able to catch up with him if we go after him now." "Forget it." Yu Xiangdong waved his hand. "I was just trying to scare him. He would be satisfied with 100 million. If he pushed Su too hard, it might not be a good thing to make things worse." After dismissing his servants, he quickly came to the guest hall in the front yard and said, "Lord Shaolwan, I have driven Su out." The boy sat leisurely on the armchair and nodded with satisfaction. "Well done." He narrowed his eyes and had no intention of leaving right away. The shopkeeper understood and brought over the precious ornaments that the boy had played with many times before. He presented them to the boy and said, "Lord Shaolwan, it's rare for you to come to an intelligence shop. Take this small gift as a token of my filial piety. I hope you will accept it." The boy opened his eyes a little, and when he saw the item, his eyes immediately widened. He said, "How can I accept it?" Although he said that, he had already reached out and put the ornament into his sleeve. He looked even more delighted, and his attitude became more respectful. He cupped his fists at the shopkeeper and said, "Then I will go back and report to the housekeeper." "Shopkeeper, you has handled it very well. Then I will have to trouble Lord Shaolwan to put in a good word for me in front of the housekeeper." "Haha, no problem." The boy laughed and left contentedly. Yu Xiangdong watched him leave. After a long time, he stopped smiling and spat on the ground. Greedy thing. As the boy of housekeeper Qingyuan, he had repeatedly asked for things from the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce in the name of the housekeeper. Not only the intelligence shop, but the other businesses were also not spared. However, Yu Xiangdong was in a good mood after obtaining 100 million Tao coins, so he did not care much. On the other side, after the boy left the imperial city and arrived at the outskirts, he headed straight for where the scholar was. Unexpectedly, he had only taken a few steps when the space in front of him fluctuated. Then a figure with his hands behind his back tore through space and appeared. The boy was startled. When he saw who it was, he immediately revealed a calm expression and said with a smile, "So it's you, esteemed guest. May I ask why you stopped me?" Su Yu's eyes were placid. He did not stray too far from the intelligence department. Instead, he was observing the movements in the intelligence department from afar. Just now, he could have directly attacked and destroyed the entire intelligence agency. However, there must be a reason for Yu Xiangdong's sudden change in attitude. He quietly observed the changes and secretly investigated. Sure enough, when he saw the boy named Shaolwan, he more or less understood what was going on. It seemed like layman Qingyuan had not heeded his warning. "Dear customer, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first." The boy wore a harmless look on his face as he bowed to Su Yu courteously. Then he walked past Su Yu and was about to leave. However, just as he moved, Su Yu casually cast a space domain, causing the boy to fall into a folded space world. He was unable to move forward. Panic and confusion appeared on the boy's face. "Dear customer, what is the meaning of this? Why are you blocking my way?" He was well aware of this, but he pretended that he did not know. Su Yu did not bother to explain anything to him. He pulled out the sinful sword and performed the morning dusk. The boy was restricted by the space domain, coupled with his mediocre cultivation, which was not even a half-step Tao Lord. There was no way he could evade or resist the sword. Crash! The simple and unadorned sword pierced through the boy's vital parts, which would instantly end his life. Unexpectedly, the boy's seemingly peaceful face suddenly became ferocious. His eyes were filled with malice as he snorted a purplish-black flame from his nostrils, which burned a hole through Su Yu's space domain. Once the space domain was broken, it was like a broken dam which spread for 1,000 miles. The whole space domain became unstable. The boy took the opportunity to extend his arms and bombarded the space domain, shattering it. He then grabbed the blade of the sinful sword before it could reach him. Creak! An ear-piercing sound of metal rubbing against each other could be heard. The boy had actually grabbed the sinful sword with just one hand and broken the morning dusk sword. Su Yu was slightly startled. He was slightly surprised. Although he had expected that the boy would not be simple, his strength had still exceeded his expectations. He had broken the morning dusk sword with just one hand, which was equivalent to a family master's level of strength. Humph! I did not want to do it myself, but now it seems like I have no choice but to dirty my hands for once. The boy's small and thin body suddenly expanded. In the blink of an eye, he had turned from a child to a 3-zhang tall giant. His whole body was filled with explosive power and a wave of Pathmaster's aura swept out in all directions like a great flood. This was the boy's true appearance. That householder Qingyuan had always regarded himself as noble and virtuous. So how could he really use a boy with a mediocre cultivation? Physique. Su Yu had a strange look on his face. If he had hidden his strength in other aspects, Su Yu might have had a hard time dealing with him. But his physique? Humph, are you afraid now? The boy laughed ferociously. The last time I used my physique was when I was being chased by a family master's level of strength. You should be honored to die by my physique. Swoosh! His voice was still lingering in the air, but he had already teleported to a 3-zhang distance from Su Yu. His huge body cast a long shadow that enveloped Su Yu's body. His left leg had already been raised high, and he was about to kick Su Yu's abdomen. With such a blow, no one below the family master's level would be spared. Boom! With a kick, the boy immediately felt the solid touch of his foot, and his heart felt at ease. Unexpectedly, the next moment, the boy was stunned. This was because, after his kick, Jingru had kicked an iron plate, and he could not kick forward another inch. When he fixed his gaze on Su Yu, his eyes were filled with shock. The human before him had transformed into a strange existence that was half human and half dragon. He stretched out a dragon claw and easily grabbed his ankle. No matter how much strength he exerted, his ankle was firmly grasped and he could not break free. Physique? Unfortunately, my forte is also physique. As soon as he finished speaking, Su Yu pulled back his elbow and smashed the boy onto the ground. Bang! With a deafening sound, the boy was smashed onto the ground by Su Yu, and a dull sound could be heard. Because the force was too great, the boy's body, which he was so proud of, was smashed into a bloody mess. The ground under his feet was also smashed into pieces. Dense cracks extended from the outskirts to the foot of the royal city. How is this possible? You! The boy lay on the ground, coughing violently. Puff! However, Su Yu stepped on his chest, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. His face was as pale as a sheet. Nothing is impossible, Su Yu said indifferently. Chapter 2282. His wings flapped violently, creating a huge storm that shook Su Yu. Seizing the opportunity, the boy flew into the sky and fled to the forest where householder Qingyuan was. Su Yu's eyes turned cold, and the space in front of his eyes immediately surged back in Su Yu's direction like waves. The boy, who was flying closer and closer, was horrified. The space realm. The law of space was extremely rare, and to comprehend it into a realm was a legendary existence. The person he had been scheming against turned out to be a space realm expert. Without hesitation, the boy immediately released his realm. However, in the depths of the space realm, as soon as his realm was released, it was ruthlessly shattered by the space realm. In a few breaths, he was swept up by the space realm and returned to Su Yu. The boy shouted fiercely, "Householder Qingyuan is of high status and has great influence in the Empire of Nightless. You must pay for what you have done to me." Su Yu's expression was indifferent. "Yes, I am looking for you because I want you to pass a message to householder Qingyuan." Before the boy could understand, Su Yu's eyes suddenly shot out 2 beams of white light into the boy's eyes. Suddenly, the boy cried out in pain. His originally fierce eyes became peaceful after a moment of struggle. Finally, he knelt on one knee in front of Su Yu and said obediently, "Master, please give me your orders." Su Yu took out a fiery red pearl and handed it to him. "Go, pass a message for me." His lips moved, and a message was transmitted to the boy's ears. After doing this, Su Yu returned to the imperial city and came to the intelligence office. His body twisted, and the next moment he appeared in the treasure house of the intelligence office. What he saw was the tens of thousands of jade pendants sealed in the treasure house, each of which contained precious information. Below the jade pendants, there was a small wooden plate with a clear price tag. The lowest one was worth tens of thousands of Dao coins. The most expensive ones were the 2 jade pendants located in the deepest part of the treasure house. One of them was the time-fixing plate information. However, the time-fixing plate information was not the most expensive one. The most expensive one was another piece of information, the knightless royal family. Is there something important in the knightless royal family? Suyu was very sensitive. Information about the knightless royal family should be known by all. How could there be any secret information? At this moment, as intelligence, it should be something that happened recently. Suyu placed the jade amulet between his brows to sense it, and he could not help but be astonished. The intelligence said that the knightless royal family was going to hold a banquet to discuss the list of candidates for the Wind Cloud Association. The so-called Wind Cloud Conference only had a very simple description in the intelligence. It was a selection conference to enter an 8-star civilization. Suyu's heart thumped. An 8-star civilization. The Sinful Maiden Palace was in an 8-star civilization. If Suyu wanted to enter, he would have to enter an 8-star civilization first. It wasn't the Yi Empire's conference that could confirm the name list of the participants of the Wind Cloud meeting. Suyu continued to read and found that the invitations to this banquet were issued in secret. Only forces and people recognized by the knightless royal family were qualified to attend this banquet. According to the report, there was a way to get an invitation letter. Suyu was immediately concerned. He was very interested in attending this banquet. He flipped through the jade piece and found that it was marked with the word "to." This meant that this piece of information had already been bought by 2 people. In other words, someone was walking in front of Suyu, looking for the invitation letter. Feeling a little anxious, Suyu put away the jade piece and the information on the time-fixing plate. Just as he was about to leave, he paused and looked at the tens of thousands of pieces of intelligence jade pieces. Without hesitation, he waved his sleeves and put all the jade pieces into his sleeves. Firstly, it was to take revenge on the shopkeeper. With all the intelligence stolen, he could forget about being the shopkeeper. More seriously, he might not even be able to keep his life. The value of so much intelligence was trillions of Tao dollars. He couldn't afford it even if he sold himself. Secondly, there might be information that would be useful to Suyu in the intelligence. For example, this royal banquet was a pleasant surprise. Holding the jade piece, Suyu immediately rushed to another place far away from the imperial city, the Tianyu Ridge. At that time, on the outskirts of the imperial city, where Suyu and the boy had fought, many people had gathered. Among them were the imperial city's imperial guards. The leading general carefully examined the scene, his eyes filled with confusion. There were no corpses nearby, and there were no other traces. It was impossible to determine what had happened. Crash! Suddenly, the imperial guards separated, and a man and a woman walked over side by side. The man was dressed in silk and had an imposing appearance. When the general saw him, he immediately trotted forward and knelt on one knee. "Greetings, Prince." There was only one prince and 2 princesses in the Knightless Empire's monarch. The man in front of him was the only prince, Prince Lingtian. "Well, you may rise," Prince Lingtian said calmly and looked at the woman beside him with a smile. The woman was dressed in white and her face was covered with a white veil, making it impossible to see her face clearly. Prince Lingtian said, "It's just a fight. Why bother the Wuxin Iron Constable?" That woman was none other than the world's #1 constable, the Wuxin Iron Constable. She had come to the Colored Glaze civilization a few years ago and had been staying there. During that time, she had been in seclusion in the palace. But just now, she suddenly came out of seclusion and came outside the city. Prince Lingtian was curious, so he accompanied her. The Wuxin Iron Constable didn't say a word. She came to the center of the battle and looked carefully. After a while, she shook her head. "This isn't a normal fight. It's a fight between 2 powerhouses whose physiques are at least at the family head level." The general was slightly surprised, as expected of the Wuxin Iron Constable. He couldn't see anything for a long time, but the Wuxin Iron Constable could see something with just a few glances. Prince Lingtian didn't mind and said, maybe it's a fight between two family head-level powerhouses. It's not important. In the Nightless Empire, there were many family head-level powerhouses. There was no need to exhaust them because of a fight between them. The fight isn't the main point. The main point is that one of them used the space domain, the Wuxin Iron Constable said calmly. She swiped her palm at the sky, and a layer of remnant ripples floated in the sky. It was the remnant of the space domain. However, no one realized it, but the Wuxin Iron Constable did. Prince Lingtian's brows furrowed. Space domain? How can it be? In all these years, our Western region has only produced one empress who grasped the space domain, the space-time death god. How can there be another space domain user? The name of the Tiani Empress shook the Western region. There was no one who didn't know her, but in an entire era, she was the only one who appeared. Now, there was actually a second person. This person must be someone who hid his strength. The waves in Prince Lingtian's heart couldn't calm down for a long time. A space domain user would definitely be an absolute powerhouse in the Western region who controlled the world in the future. Chapter 2283. Prince Lingtian's thoughts were quick. If he could take in a space domain expert for his own use, his throne would naturally be secured. Do you know this space domain expert? He asked casually. The heartless iron arrestor nodded slightly. Sort of. An invincible physique, mastering the time and space laws. Apart from Deputy Leader Su from the Pirate Alliance near the 7 ultimate civilizations. Who else could it be? The heartless iron arrestor might not have realized that Su Yu was letting him go, but after thinking about it calmly, he could see that there were many loopholes. If Su Yu was really a shameless man who lusted after his beauty, why did he bring him to a remote warship to violate her? Su Yu was proficient in the time and space law. Why did he not chase after him when he escaped? The heartless iron arrestor realized that Su Yu's true purpose might have been to take the opportunity to let him go. It was just that he did not know at that time. Oh, can you introduce me to him? Such a person is really fascinating, Prince Lingtian said with a smile. The heartless iron arrestor looked at him and shook his head slightly. Such a person will eventually enter an 8-star civilization. He is not someone you can control. Prince Lingtian was not embarrassed, even though his thoughts were exposed. He smiled calmly. I am just eager to find a talent. It is best if he is willing to serve me. If not, I will not force him. He was still a little unwilling. Would mastering the space domain mean he could enter an 8-star civilization? The time and space death god had mastered both the space domain and the time domain, but he was not fated to enter an 8-star civilization. If this person could stay by his side, he would definitely become his right-hand man. Unfortunately, the heartless iron arrestor did not want to expose his identity. A few days later, in a forest shrouded in clouds and mist, Little Chaos Boy had finally returned after a few days of traveling. He immediately went to Householder Qingyuan's meditation room and stood at the door. Reporting to Householder Qingyuan, I have followed your instructions and asked the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce to seal the information on the astrolabe. Creak. The door of the meditation room opened. Householder Qingyuan faced a Buddha statue in the door and closed his eyes to meditate. He slowly opened his eyes without looking back. The boy said, by the way, when I rushed over, he was buying information and had already paid the Tao coins. Hearing this, Householder Qingyuan suddenly stood up and said, unhappily, you were late. No, I went just in time. Not only did I not let Su get the information, but I also made him lose 100 million Tao coins for nothing. Little Chaos Boy beamed with joy and said proudly, 100 million Tao coins was a huge sum of money, even for a person of high status like Householder Qingyuan. Su Yu, a person from a declining civilization, had suddenly lost so much wealth. It was easy to imagine how he felt. 100 million? He should be quite flustered and exasperated, right? Layman Qingyuan chuckled, feeling much better. He had finally vented his anger. Yes, as far as I know, he's in so much pain that he doesn't want to live. He's making a big fuss in front of the intelligence agency, little chaos boy said. Haha. Householder Qingyuan couldn't help but stroke his beard and laugh heartily. He could imagine Su Yu's pitiful and helpless appearance after being deceived. The anger in his heart was completely restrained, and he said, You didn't let him discover you, right? Although he was not afraid of Su Yu, there was no need for him to cause trouble at his doorstep and affect his image as the Qingyuan celestial venerable in front of his believers. No, the boy said with a smile. Feeling relieved, Householder Qingyuan rewarded the boy with some Dao coins. He then waved his hand and said, You may leave. Someone else is about to walk out of the forest. However, the boy said, reporting to Householder Qingyuan, Before shopkeeper you left, he asked me to pass you a good item. Householder Qingyuan laughed involuntarily. You Xiangdong? That's thoughtful of you. Bring it here and let me have a look. The boy held an exquisite purple crystal jade box with both hands, and he carefully brought it to Householder Qingyuan. Householder Qingyuan didn't suspect anything. He opened the jade box on the spot, and a fiery red pearl entered his eyes. The smile on his face froze, and his pupils shrank abruptly. Without thinking, he turned around and fled. He had just taken a step when flames shot up into the sky behind him. The boy was instantly engulfed by the raging flames, but his calm gaze pierced through the flames and landed on Householder Qingyuan. Everything needs to be done in moderation. You will get burned if you provoke the fire. I'm warning you this time. Don't do it again. Boom! The pearl exploded completely, turning the boy into ashes. A terrifying shockwave swept out in all directions with the thatched hut as the center. The lush green grassland and the leisurely red-crowned cranes were reduced to nothingness in the blink of an eye. At the same time, the intense shockwave shattered the dense fog formed by the formation, revealing the original appearance of the primeval forest. Looking around, it was a scene of devastation. It didn't look like a utopia at all. Somewhere in the forest, a ball of fire shot into the ground, accompanied by a violent explosion. A deep pit with a diameter of 30 feet was left on the ground. The pit was charred, and an old man in tattered clothes could be seen. His hair and beard were all curled up, and there were many burns all over his body. There were traces of blood in his crimson red skin. He was Householder Qingyuan, who had escaped. Crack! A slight cracking sound came from his palm. He lowered his head and saw a crystal-colored calf that was emitting cold air. Its entire body was broken into pieces. During the critical moment just now, he had relied on this myriad chill ice calf that Princess Qian Yu had given him to absorb most of the attack. But because of this, the ice calf was destroyed. Householder Qingyuan's eyes were bloodshot, and his teeth were chattering. He wasn't in pain. He was filled with hatred. Yu Xiangdong. Householder Qingyuan looked around at the place where he had lived in seclusion, his heart filled with hatred. Whoosh! Throwing away the scorched horsetail whisk in his hand, Householder Qingyuan rushed to the imperial city, flustered and exasperated. In the city, at the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce's Intelligence Department. The Intelligence Department, which had always been open for business, was uncharacteristically closed that day. Everyone in the department stood in a straight line, not daring to breathe. That included Yu Xiangdong. In front of them stood a middle-aged man in luxurious clothes with his hands clasped behind his back. He had a handsome face, and it was obvious that he had been a handsome man when he was young. The most shocking thing was that his eyes were different from normal people's. They were gold. If Su Yu were here, he would definitely recognize the golden-eyed man in front of him. He was the master of the #1 family in the 7 ultimate civilizations, the golden-eyed scholar. He had actually joined the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce. Moreover, His status was not to be underestimated. Otherwise, he would not have brought such great pressure to the intelligence department. He stood in front of everyone, releasing an invisible aura that suppressed them so much that they could not even lift their heads. All the intelligence is missing. Is there anything you want to tell me? The golden-eyed scholar looked at the sky, his expression unusually calm. Yu Xiangdong's palms were sweaty. The golden-eyed scholar in front of him was an important person who had recently joined the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce. Chapter 2284. His status was so high that it could only be described as horrifying. The fate of a small shopkeeper like Yu Xiangdong could be decided with just a single thought in front of him. How could Yu Xiangdong not be nervous? No. Yu Xiangdong was nervous. The news of the theft of the information warehouse could not be hidden from the golden-eyed playboy, who was in charge of this area. He had come to the intelligence department to personally handle the case. How could Yu Xiangdong dare to reveal the truth? Could he tell him that he had extorted 100 million Dao coins from Suyu and that Suyu had taken revenge? If that was the case, in order to protect the reputation of the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce, the golden-eyed playboy would kill him in front of everyone. The rest of the people in the intelligence department were either Yu Xiangdong's trusted subordinates or had received many benefits from it. How could they dare reveal the truth? Oh, nothing? The golden-eyed playboy's eyes were deep. An intelligence thief will only steal information that is useful to him. All the information has been stolen. It looks like deliberate revenge. He hit the nail on the head. Yu Xiangdong's heart skipped a beat in fright. He had long heard that the new vice president was a difficult character to deal with, but he did not expect it to be true. Yu Xiangdong quickly thought of an excuse to get away with this matter. Unexpectedly, the intelligence personnel at the very end suddenly screamed. Everyone immediately looked over and was shocked to find that the golden-eyed playboy had crushed his head. The golden-eyed playboy killed without warning. There was no anger on his face, only calmness. The crowd gasped. The golden-eyed playboy calmly wiped the blood off his hand and said calmly, "I don't like it when people lie to me. From now on, I will kill one person every 10 breaths until I get the answer I want." He did not say who he would kill next. The uncertainty was even more terrifying. The group of intelligence officers looked at each other. Their expressions changed drastically. They were all weighing the pros and cons. After 10 breaths, no one was willing to reveal the truth. They were all waiting to see if the golden-eyed playboy would continue to kill. The person he had just killed might have been deliberately trying to scare them. Puff! Suddenly, one of them spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes dimmed and he fell to the ground. His body made a sizzling sound and emitted green smoke. Under everyone's gaze, he quickly turned into a pool of blood. Golden-eyed, Lang Jun raised his finger and blew on it gently. A wisp of grayish-black smoke dispersed with the wind. He said nothing more, but everyone knew that he was silently counting the time. No one held any hope of getting lucky anymore. Vice President, I think it might be someone who calls himself Suyu. A person with a weaker heart immediately replied. The golden-eyed scholar gently closed his eyes. After 10 breaths of time, the speaker's body suddenly exploded and he died on the spot. The pupils of the others shrank, and they immediately panicked. He had already said it, so why did he still kill? I'm not satisfied with this answer. Golden-eyed Lang Jun said lightly. Then he closed his eyes again and continued to count. 3 people had died in a row. The remaining people fell into a great panic and began to scramble to answer. Vice President! That person's name is Suyu, and he comes from the 7 unique civilizations. Yes, the reason why he took revenge on us should be because, manager, you swallowed 100 million Dao coins from him. That's right, Vice President. This has nothing to do with us. Finally, the golden-eyed scholar opened his eyes and fixed his gaze on one of them. He said, You mean the other party is from the 7 absolute civilizations? Yes. The man immediately said, I heard that he was recommended by the Miezheng family master of the 6th peerless family. Miezheng? The golden-eyed scholar rubbed his chin and fell into deep thought. In an instant he thought of many things. His biggest guess was that the other party was sent by the 7 absolute civilizations to track down his whereabouts. After all, he wanted to overthrow the entire 7 absolute civilizations. But after thinking about it carefully, he denied it. He had come to the colored glaze civilization without any prior plans. How could the other party find the colored glaze civilization so quickly and accurately? He spent 100 million Dao coins to buy information about the banquet invitation? Golden-eyed scholar asked. There were only 2 pieces of information worth 100 million Dao coins in the treasure vault. They were the banquet invitation and the time-fixing plate. The former was more likely. Vice President, it was to buy information about the time-fixing plate. The golden-eyed scholar was surprised. Time-fixing plate? After pondering for a long time, the golden-eyed scholar nodded slightly. I understand. As he spoke, he rose into the air and was about to leave. Everyone in the intelligence department heaved a long sigh of relief. They had finally passed and did not receive any punishment. However, the golden-eyed scholar suddenly stopped and looked down at them from above. He said calmly, "As for the mistake you made, you can atone for it with your death. Only by executing all of them could the credibility of the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce be preserved." Whoosh! His voice split into hundreds of steel needles that pierced toward them. What was extremely strange was that no one managed to dodge the seemingly mediocre and easily dodged steel needles. No matter how they dodged, and some even teleported out of the guest hall, they were still unable to escape. It was as if all of their paths had been predicted by the steel needles in advance. Other than Yu Xiangdong, who escaped with injuries, everyone else died tragically. Yu Xiangdong was a master-level expert, after all. In terms of cultivation, he was not much weaker than the golden-eyed scholar. Moreover, he had been in charge of the intelligence department for many years. How could he not have a few trump cards to protect his life? He crushed a black gourd, and a dense swarm of strange flies flew out from it. The flies surrounded him and turned him into a black stream of light, rushing into the distance. The golden-eyed scholar did not chase after them. He had more important things to do. After fleeing for several hours, he finally left the imperial city. Standing in the suburbs, Yu Xiangdong's heart was at a loss. He did not need to think about returning to the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce. The world was vast. Where should he go? Suddenly, looking at the primeval forest in front of him, Yu Xiangdong had an idea. Why not temporarily seek refuge with householder Qingyuan? With householder Qingyuan's status, the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce would have to be wary if they wanted to kill him. Fortunately, I've always been friendly to householder Qingyuan. Now, it's finally time for him to be of use. With this thought, Yu Xiangdong immediately set off for householder Qingyuan's place of seclusion. Unexpectedly, as soon as he stepped into the forest, he sensed householder Qingyuan's aura rapidly approaching. Householder Qingyuan has come out of seclusion. Yu Xiangdong was surprised and then happy. He's really giving me a pillow when I'm sleepy. He immediately flew into the sky and blocked the path that householder Qingyuan had to pass through. He cupped his fists loudly from afar. "Senior Celestial Qingyuan, how have you been?" If this was any other time, when householder Qingyuan heard this, he would naturally think that it was an ordinary greeting. However, at this moment, householder Qingyuan believed that Yu Xiangdong had controlled his child and had secretly harmed him. Asking him if he was fine now was very harsh. This was clearly a provocation. Chapter 2285. Originally, householder Qingyuan felt that there was something fishy about this and wanted to ask about it calmly. From the looks of it now, there was no need to ask any further questions. Thanks to you, I don't even have a place to live in seclusion anymore. Layman Qingyuan's face suddenly darkened, as if ink had been splashed across the sky. Shopkeeper Yu was stunned and asked, "What do you mean?" He did not understand what Householder Qingyuan meant at all. Humph. Householder Qingyuan snorted coldly through his nostrils. An image of a celestial realm surrounded by celestial clouds suddenly descended and enveloped the surroundings. Shopkeeper Yu, who was inside, quickly realized that his body was disintegrating and becoming a part of the immortal realm. This was the domain of layman Qingyuan. Anyone who was within it would be melted by the domain from the inside out. It was an extremely vicious domain. Manager Yu was shocked. Seeing that Householder Qingyuan was serious, he immediately activated his domain to defend himself. He shouted, "You're crazy!" He simply couldn't understand whether Householder Qingyuan was out of his mind or not. Why would he attack him? He even inexplicably claimed that he was the one who destroyed his seclusion. "Yes, I'm crazy. You'll drive him crazy." Householder Qingyuan was enraged. Not only did he release his domain, but he also took out a white fan with only 3 feathers. That was his Tao artifact. With a wave of his white fan, a gust of cold wind blew past Manager Yu's body. His soul suddenly turned cold. A part of it had been slapped away. It was layman Qingyuan's famous Tao artifact, the Soulless Fan. Once activated, it could imperceptibly injure one's soul. It was extremely terrifying. Yu Xiangdong's hair stood on end. How could he dare to hold back when his life was in danger? "Open!" Yu Xiangdong roared furiously as he unleashed his domain. The towering image of 100,000 mountains continued to descend, continuously suppressing Householder Qingyuan's immortal realm domain. With a final pop, the celestial realm domain was squeezed back. At the same time, Yu Xiangdong took out a pitch-black stone snake. This snake was a Tao treasure, and its name was Life Stripper. After it was activated, it could quickly drill into the enemy's body and devour them from the inside out, layer by layer. It was as if it was stripping away the enemy's life. It was extremely vicious. Hiss! The venomous snake slithered over like a wisp of smoke, ignoring the defensive treasures all over Householder Qingyuan's body and burrowing straight into his body. Ah! In an instant, Householder Qingyuan let out a tragic cry. Clearly, Life Splitter had already started to devour Householder Qingyuan's flesh. Not only did this not make Householder Qingyuan cower, but it also angered him even more. Shopkeeper Yu controlled his child for no reason and almost killed him. Now he even wanted to kill him. Gritting his teeth, layman Qingyuan bellowed furiously, "Die!" As he activated the Tao tool, he took out a steel needle with his other hand. The steel needle was snow-white in color and emitted a soul-stealing chill. Yu Xiangdong's eyes narrowed. The 9-5 Heavens Frost Needle, personally bestowed by His Majesty? The 9-5 Sky Frost Needle was refined from the most famous extreme cold calamity ice of the Lazuli civilization. There were more than one. 5 kilograms of this ice in the entire Lazuli civilization, and it had long been divided up by several powerful forces in the civilization. The Nightless Kingdom obtained 10 taels of it. All of them were refined into the 9-5 Heaven Chill Needles by the monarch, a total of 99 of them. Once it was released, it would not stop until it killed the enemy. The needles contained the world's #1 frost poison. Once it pierced someone, even a higher-level existence would be poisoned to death and turned into ice shards, let alone a family head. Yu Xiangdong had never expected that one of the most important treasures of the royal family would be bestowed to Householder Qingyuan. "Princess Qian, you must have secretly given it to him." Yu Xiangdong felt a chill run down his spine. He hurriedly said, "Householder, calm down. I really don't know what I did wrong." He hurriedly pulled out Life Splitter from his body to show that he wanted to negotiate peacefully. Householder Qingyuan raised his eyebrows slightly. "Oh, it has nothing to do with you?" He also put away his Tao tool. Seeing that Householder Qingyuan had finally calmed down and was ready to negotiate peacefully, Yu Xiangdong heaved a sigh of relief. He smiled bitterly in his heart. Why did he have to do this? Why did he have to do this if he could just negotiate peacefully? However, in the next moment, householder Qingyuan's seemingly calm face turned cunning and sinister. Who would believe that? He did not believe that it was a coincidence. He had been ambushed by the boy and almost lost his life, and then Yu Xiangdong had rushed to the place where he was hiding. No matter how he looked at it, it was Yu Xiangdong who had gone to confirm whether he was dead or not, right? Yu Xiangdong was on guard. Without thinking, he retreated in another direction, cursing angrily. "Old madman! You dare to curse me?" Householder Qingyuan's killing intent rose. The 9-5 heavens cold needle in his palm turned into a faint cold light and instantly flew out. In the blink of an eye, he heard a cracking sound coming from the horizon. Householder Qingyuan rushed over to take a look. An ice sculpture was falling from the sky and smashing onto the ground, then turning into ice shards. Under the effect of the 9-5 heavens cold needle, his flesh and blood had been poisoned into ice. Whoosh! The 9-5 heavens cold needle spun around and returned to householder Qingyuan's palm. He snorted disdainfully, then turned around and left. At that time, Heavenly Defense Ridge. It was located at the border between the Nightless Empire and the neighboring force, the Palace of Light. The Palace of Light and the Nightless Empire were forces of the colored glaze civilization and were close to each other. In terms of overall strength, the Palace of Light was far stronger than the Nightless Empire. In every generation, the Palace of Light would produce an extremely powerful genius, a genius of the current generation of Gaia. In previous competitions of the same generation, the peers of the Nightless Empire were often in a state of being crushed. Although the younger generations of the Nightless Empire often regarded this as a humiliation, they worked hard to change this unchanging disadvantage. But for tens of millions of years, the martial arts exchange that occurred every few years always ended with the defeat of the Nightless Empire. The Heavenly Defense Ridge was the dividing line between the two great forces. Standing on the mountain ridge, Su Yu looked at the Palace of Light. As far as the eye could see, it was decorated with ice crystals, emitting an unusually dazzling light under the refraction of the sun. This was the origin of the Palace of Light. However, he was more concerned about a Taoist temple on the Heavenly Defense Ridge. The Taoist temple was dilapidated and small, with only 5 or 6 small halls inside. In addition, the Heavenly Defense Ridge was extremely high, and there were biting cold gales along the way. Without the cultivation of a divine warrior of heaven and earth, one might not be able to easily ascend the mountain. Therefore, there were no pilgrims in the Taoist temple. Staring at the lonely Taoist temple, Su Yu could not believe it. Would there be an invitation from the Nightless Empire here? If he had not strictly followed the route of the intelligence, Su Yu would not have believed it. But the intelligence of the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce had never been false. He put his hands behind his back and stepped into the Taoist temple. Inside the Taoist temple, an old man in a simple Taoist robe was bent over, sweeping the snow in front of the temple. His movements were slow and unsteady, and he looked like he was about to die. Hearing the footsteps, the old man turned around, revealing a face that had been burned by a fire. Scars were all over it, and it was very frightening. A distinguished guest has arrived. The old man put down his broom and bowed in a Taoist salute. Su Yu returned the salute and said, "I would like to attend the banquet of the Nightless Empire, and would like to ask the old man to give me some guidance. Please report that there is a channel here to obtain it." Presumably, it would be exchanged with Taoist coins or other treasures or elixirs, right? The old man's eyes were calm, and after a moment of silence, he said, "Young master, please come with me." He led Su Yu to the backyard of the Taoist temple. The backyard was barren and overgrown with weeds. It seemed as if no one had taken care of it. Amidst the weeds, an inconspicuous old grave came into view, a natural grave. On the tombstone, only the name of the deceased was recorded. Other than that, there was no other information. Who had set up the tombstone? When had the tombstone been erected? Where had the deceased come from? There was no information at all. What surprised Su-Yu was that on both sides of the old tomb, there was a young man sitting cross-legged. They sat on the bone-chilling ice, deep in thought. Their bodies were also covered in cold snow. I do have an invitation to the banquet, and I am willing to give it to someone, but only if you can answer one of my questions. The old man stared at the tombstone with a complicated expression. Su-Yu nodded. Please ask. The old man's hands were hidden in his sleeves, and his gaze was distant, as if he had reached the distant past. Why do people die? Birth, old age, sickness, and death were all part of the cycle of heaven and earth. Who could not die? Who could not die? Even the high and mighty stone emperor of the holy mountain could not escape the fate of death. Where there was life, there was death. Where there was existence, there was death. No one was an exception. Su-Yu wanted to answer, but the words were on the tip of his tongue, and he slowly closed his mouth. His eyes were filled with confusion. Attributing the cause to the cycle of heaven's law was only scratching the surface of the problem, and not delving into the essence of the problem. Why did people die? Please allow me to think here for 3 days, Su-Yu said. The old man nodded. Go ahead. So, Su-Yu sat in front of the tomb, pondering the mystery with the other 2 people. Su-Yu caught a group of worms, placed them in a larger vessel, and provided them with enough food. Not only that, but he continued to instill vitality into them, ensuring that none of the worms died from exhaustion. Then he activated time acceleration. Under the state of time acceleration of 500 times, the worms rapidly multiplied, generation after generation, without any deaths. In theory, the worms should have reached an unprecedented scale, or at least far exceeded the capacity of the vessel. However, this did not happen. Because the space for activity was limited, in order to survive, the stronger worms would kill the weaker ones and so on. Under the state of time acceleration, the number of Zergs was maintained at a constant number for 3 years. Looking at this scene, Su-Yu understood. Crash! At this time, the 2 men who were meditating on both sides of the old tomb woke up from their meditation. Both of them stared at Su-Yu, who was standing opposite them in shock. They did not expect that there would be a 3rd person besides them. Looking at the situation, he should be thinking about the old man's problem, just like them. If this person is here, he must have come because of the invitation from the Sleepless Empire. The man on the right had soft features, and his voice was very soft. He said with slight surprise, the strange thing is, since he could afford to pay 100 million Dao coins for information, his status should not be low. It should not be difficult to get an invitation. The other man was a little arrogant and said lightly, Wealth does not equal status. It is not uncommon for some lucky people to accidentally obtain large amounts of wealth. Chapter 2286. The gentle-looking man did not say much and followed closely behind. After Su-Yu had thought it through, he slowly got up, shook off the snow on his body, and walked to the front of the palace with his hands behind his back. The old man was sitting cross-legged in the yard, looking like he was trying to understand something. We already have our answers. Do you want to hear them? The arrogant man did not care that the old man was trying to understand and interrupted him. The old man opened his eyes, which were calm, without the slightest hint of anger. Instead, there was a glimmer of anticipation in his eyes. The 2 of you are the 10 great light envoys of the Palace of Light, with extraordinary powers of understanding. I look forward to your answers. Su-Yu's eyes flashed as he listened. People from the Palace of Light? You answer first. The old man looked at the arrogant man who had spoken. The arrogant man looked at the sky and said, I think that death is the final destination of life. Where there is life, there is death. Everything is under the control of the invisible great path. He thought his answer was exquisite, but the old man's eyes dimmed when he heard it. The arrogant man stared at the old man, hoping to get the expression he wanted. However, he just shook his head lightly and said, Picking up the words of others, how shallow. The arrogant man's answer, which he thought was not bad, was only evaluated as shallow. His face turned green and red, and he felt a little embarrassed. The old man did not care about him and looked at the other man. "What about you?" The gentle-looking man pondered for a while and said, "I think that life and death are a kind of reincarnation. Death lays the foundation for new life, and new life welcomes the final chapter of death. They go back and forth, without beginning and without end, constructing the entire cycle of life and death." Su Yu was slightly surprised as he looked at the man. His thoughts were quite deep. The old man could not help but nod. "Although it did not satisfy me, you have your own unique views." His palm flashed, and a light blue invitation appeared. He threw it to the man. The gentle-looking man caught it, cupped his fists, and said, "Thank you, sir." Finally, the old man looked at Su Yu and asked, "You have a new view?" "Sort of," Su Yu said. The old man had lost hope, and his eyes became calm again. Even the light envoys of the Palace of Light gave an unsatisfactory answer, let alone a nameless young man. "Tell me, why do people die?" Su Yu said calmly, "Because we kill ourselves." Not only the old Taoist, but the two emissaries of light were also stunned. These words were a little shocking. A ripple appeared in the old Taoist's calm eyes as he asked in surprise, "Why do you say that?" The two men also looked over curiously. These words were indeed very fresh, and they had simply never heard of them before. Su Yu said emotionally, "The world isn't infinite. There is limited space and limited resources. There are only so many living beings that can be supported. Only when a part of it dies will there be room for new life. That's why there's the law of the jungle in this world. The weak are killed by the strong. Only then can the balance of the world be maintained." This was what Su Yu meant when he said that his own weakness had killed him. Upon hearing this, the gentle-looking man pondered Su Yu's words. At first, he felt that this was too extreme, but after thinking about it carefully, he realized that it was applicable to all living beings at all levels. From an ant in an ant's nest to a living being in a civilization. Wasn't it the same for the entire absolute beginning realm? With limited resources, it was destined that the weak would be preyed upon by the strong, and it was natural selection. The old Taoist pondered for a long time. His calm eyes were complicated as he murmured, "Do people die because of their own weakness?" After a long silence, the old Taoist stood up, took out a similar blue invitation, and handed it to Su Yu. He said with admiration, "Your answer is the most satisfying I've ever heard. Here's the invitation." Su Yu was delighted and took it with both hands. "You three, please go back." Except for the arrogant man, Su Yu and the gentle-looking man were satisfied. Su Yu took the lead and headed for the imperial city. As he hurried, he opened the invitation, and when he saw it, he couldn't help but be stunned. How could this be? He immediately took out another golden invitation. He compared the two invitations. Except for the difference in color, the cover and the content inside were exactly the same. "I already had the invitation?" Su Yu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He had been busy for a long time, but it turned out to be in vain. Strange, who was the blue-robed man that day? Su Yu fumbled with the golden invitation, his heart full of doubts. That day, he had met an unruly woman. Later, the girl's father caught up and gave Su Yu this golden invitation. He really didn't expect this invitation to be an invitation to the banquet of the sleepless empire. Its value was immeasurable. Information alone could sell for 100 million Dao coins, let alone a real invitation. The identity of the blue-robed man must be extraordinary. "Maybe I'll see him again at the banquet," Su Yu thought to himself. When he first came to the colored glaze civilization, Su Yu had already seen several strong masters of the family. He needed to improve his strength again and take himself to the next level. At present, his body had already been transformed, and the cultivation of the evil dragon Bible had reached a bottleneck. He also needed to determine the whereabouts of the divine throne of heaven and earth. Only the transformation of the soul could be achieved. After a long period of tempering by Taichu Chi, his soul had been transformed by more than 90%. With another 10 years of tempering, it should be able to be transformed. However, before coming to the colored glaze civilization, Suyu had learned that in the Palace of Light, there was a strange creature called the Divine Deer of Light. It could see through people's hearts and distinguish between good and evil. It was the only one in the entire Palace of Light. Rumor had it that it could see through the souls of others because its soul was exceptionally strong. Thanks to its soul, only a small piece of the pair of antlers on its head needed to be ground into powder and swallowed. It could quickly transform the soul in a short period of time. If Suyu could get a piece of it, he might be able to save 10 years and complete the transformation of the soul. Unfortunately, the Divine Deer of Light was a unique treasure of the Palace of Light. Usually, it was guarded by several strong masters of the family. It was extremely difficult to get close to it, let alone obtain its antlers. Shaking his head, Suyu stopped thinking about it. "Sir, please wait." Just as he was hurrying along, the two men caught up with him. The arrogant man took out a golden card and said, "There are 300 million Tao coins in it, by your invitation." As he spoke, he flicked his finger and shot the golden card over. Suyu frowned slightly. It wasn't that he couldn't sell an extra invitation, but the tone of this person didn't sound like he was buying something. It was as if he thought highly of him and wanted to reward him. 300 million Tao coins was indeed a lot, but Suyu didn't need them. Not selling. Suyu did not even look at the golden card, but turned and continued on his way. The arrogant man blocked Suyu's path with his arms crossed in front of his chest. "Maybe I need to reintroduce myself. My name is Wang Jiang, ranked 5th among the 10 great emissaries of light." The title of Emissary of Light was a nightmare for the peers of the Nightless Empire. In the last confrontation between the two great forces, the Emissary of Light, ranked 8th, defeated all the heaven rulers of the Nightless Empire. Even the Emissary of Light, ranked 10th, could sweep away all the peers of the Nightless Empire except the top 3. Wang Jiang was ranked 5th. His strength would definitely be number 1 in the Nightless Empire. However, as long as his strength did not reach the level of Xiaoyan, it was no big deal to Suyu. "Oh," Suyu said calmly. And then, Wang Jiang's eyes sharpened as he bared his teeth. "Is it because the Storm Tea Party has not been held for too long that the younger generation of the Nightless Empire has forgotten how we oppressed you in the past? The heaven rulers of the Nightless Empire should be in awe when they saw the Emissary of Light." Unfortunately, Suyu is not from the Nightless Empire. "What does that have to do with me?" Suyu walked past him and continued on his way. Unexpectedly, as soon as he walked past him, Wang Jiang attacked. He snorted coldly. "It's better to talk with your fists when dealing with people like you who can't see things clearly." Feeling the strong wind behind him, Suyu's eyes darkened. How domineering! This was not even the Palace of Light, and he dared to force someone to buy and sell? Get lost! Suyu pulled out his sword and stabbed it behind him. Ding! The sound of weapons clashing traveled into Suyu's ears. A great force traveled along the sword to Suyu's palm, causing his palm to go numb. What a great force! Suyu was secretly shocked. The Palace of Light had suppressed the Nightless Empire for so many years. It was not as simple as a coincidence. However, in terms of strength, no one in the same generation was a match for Suyu. He suddenly exerted force with the hand holding the sword hilt, and the great force gradually bounced back. Thud, thud, thud. Immediately there was the sound of him staggering backward. Turning his head, he saw the arrogant Wang Jiang looking at him with a look of surprise. His eyes were filled with disbelief. The gentle-looking man, watching from afar, covered his mouth, his eyes wide open. Wang Jiang's physique could be said to be one of the best among his peers, comparable to a master of a family. Even the king of light envoys, who was ranked #1, could barely match him in terms of physique. The silver-haired human in front of him did not seem to be at the level of a pathmaster, right? But how could his physique be better than Wang Zhiyang's? In fact, he did not know that this was just the tip of the iceberg of Su Yu's physique. Wang Zhiyang was most proud of his physique. How could he admit that he was inferior to Su Yu? Again, Wang Zhiyang was unwilling to give up and rushed over again. Su Yu raised his eyebrows and said lightly, "This is the territory of the Nightless Empire. Are you sure you want to fight me here?" The gentle-looking man's slender eyebrows gently raised. If he got serious, Wang Zhiyang's actions could be regarded as provoking a dispute. In the territory of the Nightless Empire, to attack a peer of the Nightless Empire would, strictly speaking, cause a dispute between the two parties. Wang Zhiyang, stop. Wang Zhiyang was angry. How could he stop? But he still understood where he was and said, "Then let's change to the Palace of Light. Then there will be no problem." Change. Chapter 2287. But Wang Zhiyang had already reached into his waist and crushed a purple-black gourd hanging from his belt. The gourd shattered, and a large amount of sand gushed out from within. As the sand blew, the space where Su Yu, the gentle-looking man, and Wang Zhiyang were standing was blown away, so much so that a large area of nothingness was emptied. Endless power of nothingness surged in, engulfing the vast snowfield. Under the sweeping of the sand, the space and people were instantly blown out of the sleepless empire and into the territory of the bright palace. This place was not far from the border, and there were many military camps dotted nearby. Tens of thousands of bright palace soldiers were training in the military camps. Whoosh, the wind blew, and the figures of the three people were blown away. Wang Zhiyang's face was ferocious. "Congratulations, you have come to the territory of the bright palace." Now, he had no qualms about attacking Su Yu. Even if he killed Su Yu on the spot, it would be because Su Yu had trespassed into the territory of the bright palace. Su Yu shook off the dust and sand on his body. His tone was surprisingly calm as he said indifferently, "It's unnecessary." No matter which power it was, the outcome would not change. "Is that so?" Wang Zhiyang laughed, and then his eyes suddenly became fierce, pouncing forward like a tiger or wolf. His physique was released to its fullest. As he rushed forward, his powerful physique shook the space. Looking from afar, layers of shadows appeared around Wang Zhiyang. It was very shocking. Su Yu did not say a word, but took a step forward. Seeing Su Yu's arrogance, Wang Zhiyang sneered. As the envoy of light, how could it be as simple as having a strong physique? Just as he was about to get close to Su Yu, Wang Zhiyang's fair skin quickly turned pitch black, and his body was surrounded by a large amount of purple fog. The ancient ice field under his feet immediately rotted upon contact with his feet. However, to Su Yu, this was just an insignificant skill. He could kill him on the spot with just one finger. Seeing the other rapidly approaching, Su Yu was about to make a move, but the gentle-looking man stood between the two with a cold expression, glaring at Wang Zhiyang. Presumptuous! He was already dissatisfied with Wang Zhiyang's unauthorized attack, and then he used the sand without permission, completely angering him. The gentleman opened his mouth and shouted, "Trap!" The word trap, visible to the naked eye, appeared from his mouth, and then became bigger and bigger. Finally, with a clang, Wang Zhiyang was trapped inside. Wang Zhiyang was startled and immediately withdrew the poison in his body. At the same time, he calmed down and said with slight fear, "Xianin, don't stop me." "That's enough." The gentleman named Xianin glared at Wang Zhiyang. "Don't forget why we came to the Nightless Kingdom. If you continue to cause trouble, don't blame me for being merciless. Didn't I do everything for the invitation?" Wang Zhiyang said unhappily. Xianin said coldly, "You know very well whether that's the case or not." Rather than saying that it was for the invitation, it was more like he was fighting for his pride. "Wang Zhiyang, I can carry out this mission alone. You go back to the Light Palace. Go back and report now, no mistakes. Xianyin was ranked 4th among the radiant emissaries, and her status was higher than Wang Zhuyang's. What? Wang Zhuyang gritted his teeth. This mission was something he had fought hard for. How could he be disqualified just like that? But the ranks of the radiant emissaries were very strict. The one in front had a great deal of control over the one behind him. He had no choice but to obey. Yes. Wang Zhuyang lowered his head, his eyes filled with hatred. He did not understand why Xianyin would side with an outsider, even disqualifying him from carrying out the mission. Xianyin looked at Wang Zhuyang coldly, then turned to look at Suyu. Her expression softened as she said, "Mister, I am deeply sorry for the trouble my companion has caused you. I hope you do not mind." Suyu looked at Xianyin meaningfully. This person was very cautious. Realizing that Suyu was a threat, he stopped the battle. It looked like he was protecting Suyu, but in reality, he was protecting Wang Zhuyang. "Watch out for your man." Suyu looked at the trap, word binding Wang Zhuyang, and was slightly shocked. To be able to become the radiant emissary of the Radiant Palace, he was no ordinary person. If they were to fight, Suyu should be able to defeat him, but it would take some effort. As he spoke, Suyu turned and left. Xianyin glared at Wang Zhuyang with a look of warning. "While I am at the Nightless Empire, behave yourself." With a tap of her toes, Xianyin hurried to the Nightless Empire. After a long time, the trap word lost its power and collapsed bit by bit. Wang Zhuyang was finally free. He turned to look in the direction Suyu had left, his eyes flickering. "My apologies, Xianyin. I cannot tolerate the trash of the Nightless Empire standing above the Palace of Light." Half a day later, in the army camp at the border, Wang Zhuyang respectfully stood in front of the general of the army. "Uncle, your nephew begs you to issue a warrant for a person." The Wang family was powerful in the Palace of Light and had many talents. The most famous of them all was the southwest border commander of the Palace of Light, Wang Shigong, known as the God of War. Wang Shigong was in high spirits, correcting military documents in the army camp. Hearing Wang Zhuyang's request, he said without anger, "In the army camp there is no distinction between close and distant." Wang Zhuyang shuddered. He was as timid as a mouse in front of this person. He hurriedly corrected himself. "As you wish, Commander Wang." Wang Shigong calmly said, "Who is wanted?" "An unknown citizen of the Nightless Empire." Wang Zhuyang's eyes were filled with hatred. The reason? Wang Shigong's eyes were sharp. Wang Zhuyang was about to speak when Wang Shigong interrupted him. "If it is for official business, I will issue a warrant. If it is for personal matters, there is no need to speak." Wang Zhuyang's heart trembled. He was displeased. Wang Shigong had a high position of power and was protected by the Wang family. However, there was one bad thing about him. He was too upright and plain-spoken. He was extremely strict with the Wang family. If others made a mistake, he would be sincere. But if the Wang family made a mistake, he would only punish them more severely. Wang Zhuyang was arrogant. He feared no one but Wang Shigong. But since he was already in front of Wang Shigong, he naturally would not back down. He gritted his teeth and said, reporting to Commander Wang, "I found this person intruding into the territory of the Palace of Light. I went forward to ask him why he was there, who knew he would attack and injure me." As he spoke, he rolled up his sleeves, revealing the bruises on his arms. They were caused by Suyu's counterattack when he attacked him. It was clear that he had attacked Suyu first and brought him to the Palace of Light. But in his words, it was Suyu who had intruded into the Palace of Light and injured him. Wang Shigong's eyes were calm. These injuries were not enough to issue a warrant for a person. Wang Zhang said, "Moreover, he broke the cosmos gourd given to me by the palace master." As he spoke, he took out the remains of the crushed gourd. Seeing this object, Wang Shigong's eyes finally changed. The Cosmos Gourd was an object personally refined by the Palace Master of the Palace of Light. It was only awarded to meritorious officials. The Wang family was fortunate enough to obtain 3 gourds. One of them was given to Wang Jiang for protection while he went on a mission to the Nightless Empire. He did not expect to destroy one just like that. This object was personally given to him by the Palace Master. Destroying it was not a serious crime, but it was enough to warrant a warrant. Wang Shigong stared deeply into Wang Jiang's eyes. "Can you guarantee that everything you said is true?" "Yes," Wang Jiang said with certainty. There was no evidence to prove that he was lying anyway. Wang Shigong nodded and waved his pen. A warrant appeared. It was set ablaze on the spot, turning into a large field of sparks. At the same time, a ball of fire appeared in the small military camps along the border of the Palace of Light. Within the flames, the content of Wang Shigong's warrant appeared. Instantly, the checkpoints on the way to the Nightless Kingdom were all tightened up. At this moment, Suyu returned to the border of the 2 countries. He only needed to cross the mountain range in front of him to return. However, he was in a foreign land and had made enemies with others. Suyu naturally had to be more careful. He stood in the shadow of a large tree, looking at the foot of the mountain at a tower. The tower was located between 2 mountains. If he wanted to return to the Nightless Empire, he could only pass through the official road below the tower. If he crossed over the mountain range without permission, he would trigger the formation on the border and be killed on the spot. Unless he obtained Wang Jiang's strange gourd again and forced his way through the powerful sand. He saw with his own eyes that the tower was under martial law. Merchants and martial artists would be closely compared to their true appearances. They had exquisite treasures. No matter how good the disguise technique was, there was no way to hide. On the wall in front of the tower, there was a wanted list with Su Yu's face drawn on it. He was wanted. Fortunately, he had taken precautions. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Although the experts in the tower could not threaten Suyu, there were many formations in the tower. It would be easy to trap and kill Suyu. All of a sudden, Suyu caught a glimpse of several figures galloping at high speed and stopped in front of the city tower. The rest of them were dressed like soldiers. Only a young man with an arrogant expression seemed out of place. This person was naturally Wang Jiang. Based on his memory, he had guessed the path Suyu might have taken and arrived at the pass. "General Qin, is there anyone suspicious?" Wang Jiang's arrival was welcomed by the general guarding the pass. General Qin shook his head and said no, but we can guarantee that this person will not be able to leave the bright palace. Wang Jiang creased his brows and thought that should not be the case. With his speed, he should have arrived here half a day ago. After thinking for a moment, Wang Jiang said, "Mem, please guard this place strictly. Do not let this person go." As he spoke, he led a few powerful officers who were protecting him to investigate the situation at the other passes. A few days later, they passed by a small, remote forest. The sun was setting. The afterglow of dusk elongated the shadows of the trees. There's someone under the tree. It's him, the wanted criminal. Suddenly, a vigilant bodyguard saw a person in the forest. What shocked him was that the person was the wanted criminal they were looking for. Wang Jiang was also stunned. Why was he here? He had obviously gone to the border. But no matter what, he had finally found Suyu. Haha, I can wear out iron shoes in fruitless searching, only to find him by chance. Wang Jiang could not help but laugh. Of all places to meet Suyu, he had to meet him here. Unexpectedly, under the shade of the tree, Suyu put down his arms and slowly walked out of the long shadow. He revealed a pair of eyes that were as cold as stars. "I have been waiting for you." Chapter 2288. Wang Jiang was slightly startled. Did they not run into each other by chance? He felt that something was amiss. Did Suyu not know his situation? How could he dare to appear in front of him alone? Although he was arrogant, he was still rational. Vigilance welled up in his heart as he said, "Deputy Generals, the fugitive is right in front of us. I hope that you can capture him." The three pathmasters nodded and said to Wang Jiang, "Envoy Jiang, please step back and protect yourself." In fact, Wang Jiang had already stepped back and kept a safe distance from them. The three deputy generals were relieved and immediately used their domains. The three of them had different domains, which were thunder, fire, and wood respectively. After they used their domains, they fused together perfectly, forming a magnificent scene of heavenly thunder and earthly fire burning all over the sky. It was quite difficult to fuse different domains together, and it was impossible to succeed without years of cooperation. These three people were probably the elites of the Southwest Army. With the fusion of three domains, no one could do anything to them unless a master of the family arrived. "Sir, you have committed a great crime in our bright palace. Why don't you surrender now?" One of the deputy generals shouted, trying to suppress them with his imposing manner. However, Suyu walked over calmly, one step at a time. His eyes were like two ancient wells that would never change, without any fluctuations. The afterglow of the setting sun elongated his shadow until it enveloped the three of them. His calm and composed temperament made the three of them feel uneasy. It was as if the person in front of them was not a half-path master, but a king. Charge! However, the three of them were soldiers, so they were fearless. Their vast domains engulfed the surroundings. Suyu was also engulfed by the domains. Boundless raging flames, rumbling heavenly thunder, and would incessantly fuel the flames. The domains were like hell on earth, burning everything. The three deputy generals had expected that even if Suyu could resist them, he would still be severely injured. However, no one had expected that Suyu, who was among them, would continue to walk toward them at a moderate pace without even lifting a finger. He was completely unscathed, and there were no signs of him being injured by the raging flames and heavenly thunder. How is this possible? The three of them turned pale with fright. Even a master of the family would find it difficult to achieve such a feat. Continue. The three deputy generals continued using their domains, causing the flames to become more and more intense. However, Suyu walked over, not even a speck of dust could be seen, until he was 30 feet away from them. At this moment, he finally opened his mouth and said indifferently, "This matter has nothing to do with you. Move aside." The eyelids of the three deputy generals twitched violently. They had exerted all of their abilities, yet they were still unable to inflict any damage on Suyu. From the start to the end, the other party had not made a single move. His strength had probably reached an unimaginable level. "Sir, you have already committed a great crime against the Palace of Light. I hope that you will realize the error of your ways and not repeat your mistakes," a deputy general advised. Whenever Suyu took a step forward, they would take a step back. With their duty, they did not dare to leave Wang Jiang behind. Suyu's gaze became even colder. "Great crime? The crimes of your Radiant Light Palace are really easy to commit." He was brought to the Palace of Light and threatened to be killed. Moreover, he had not done anything from the beginning to the end, yet he had become a person who had committed a great crime. Did he not find it laughable? "Sir, please stop!" the three of them shouted. Suyu had indeed stopped in his tracks, but there was a sword in his hand. "I have already warned you to get out of the way. Since you insist on helping the evildoer, then I will drag you down with me." His patience had already reached its limit. First, Wang Jiang had snatched his invitation, then attacked him. Then, when the attack had failed, he had brought him to the Palace of Light to be killed. Then, when the killing had failed, he had slandered him as a wanted criminal. He could not bear it anymore. There was no need to bear it anymore. "Xiaoxi!" Suyu swung his sword. That extremely exquisite swordsmanship drew a plain and unremarkable trajectory. The three domains were instantly shattered. At the same time, The trajectory touched the bodies of the three Path Masters, and they were easily cut into two halves. The three souls fled in terror, fleeing far away into the horizon. At this moment, how could they care about Wang Jiang? Suyu calmly looked at their souls. A crack appeared between his brows, and he suddenly sucked in the souls of the three Path Masters. Wang Jiang, who was watching the battle from afar, sucked in a breath of cold air. The three Path Masters who had attacked together with their domains had all died without their souls escaping. Wang Jiang's scalp went numb, and his heart trembled continuously. Finally, a trace of fear grew within him. He had thought that Su Yu's physique was only slightly stronger, and that his true abilities were nothing. Who knew? Creak! The sound of Su Yu stepping on corpses could be heard, and Wang Jiang was shocked awake. Looking at Su Yu, who was walking toward him quickly, looking at Su Yu's completely cold eyes, Wang Jiang was like a mortal who had encountered a fierce tiger, and his heart was filled with fear and despair. Go, brother. Wang Jiang cupped his fists, and the arrogant look on his face disappeared. He said cautiously, "There is some misunderstanding between us. Actually, the person who put a bounty on your head isn't me, but someone else." Su Yu's eyes were calm. "Do you believe what you just said?" He sheathed his long sword, and golden dragon scales began to appear all over his body. "It's true. I think we can actually be friends." Wang Jiang couldn't find any words to ease the tension between them, so he began to speak nonsense and childish words. He could only blame himself for being too ruthless and leaving no room for reconciliation. "Your companion Xianin has already saved you once, and I have let you go. Unfortunately, you do not cherish it and stubbornly seek death." Su Yu had already transformed into his half-dragon form. "If that's the case, why shouldn't I fulfill your wish?" His upper-tier heavenly dragon body emitted a strong aura, and Wang Jiang's heart finally collapsed, and he fled frantically. However, how could he escape from this? Su Yu took a step forward. It seemed like an ordinary step, but the entire space in front of him retreated backward. Wang Jiang, who had clearly fled to the horizon, immediately appeared 20 feet away from him. Sensing the strange changes in the space, Wang Jiang turned pale with fright. It was as if he had stepped into an abyss, and his heart was thumping wildly. No. In his fear, he began to fight back. The surface of his body turned dark purple again, and it was surrounded by purple smoke. Without thinking, he launched an earth-shattering punch behind him. At the same time, it was laced with poison that could crush any strong man below the master of the family. But Su Yu had the body of a dragon, and his body contained the powerful bloodline of the dragon race. Ordinary poison could not harm his body at all. He reached out with his right hand, gently grabbed Wang Jiang's fist, and twisted it. With a cracking sound, his entire arm was completely dislocated. All of a sudden, Wang Jiang let out a heart-wrenching scream. Having lost an arm, he subconsciously touched the gourd at his waist, which was his life-saving item. But when his hand was empty, he realized that his previous reckless actions had already used up the precious gourd. "You can't kill me. I am the light emissary of the Palace of Light, and I have a high position. If I die, you will be in endless trouble." Su Yu's eyes became more indifferent. "I feel that if you don't die, I will be in even more trouble." With this narrow-minded person's heart, if he did not die, he would definitely do everything in his power to take revenge on Su Yu. When he finished speaking, the dragon claw mercilessly penetrated his chest, crushing his heart. At the same time, he hooked 2 fingers, took away his soul, and sealed it in his own space soul. After doing this, Su Yu had intended to leave immediately, not even bothering to collect the space storage device. It had been a long time since he had plundered the belongings of his enemies. But when he recalled the strange gourd, his heart moved, and he put away the space storage device. Looking around, Su Yu secretly analyzed. The border inspection of the Palace of Light would probably continue for some time, but not forever. There were many martial artists coming and going between the sleepless empire and the Palace of Light. 10 to 15 days was not a big deal, but if it took too long, it would definitely affect the normal martial and economic exchanges, as well as the relationship between the two countries. For a mere fugitive, he would not go to such lengths. Therefore, the maximum time for a wanted criminal was not more than a year. Looking at the dazzling crystals, Suyu smirked. Since I rarely come, why not take a look at the Palace of Light? When he finished speaking, he flew toward the holy land of the Palace of Light, the holy city of light. A few days later, several figures flew over, landing in front of the 4 corpses. Among them was the commander, Wang Shigong. But at this moment, Wang Shigong was not the tallest person on the scene. The tallest was a delicate girl in a snow-white robe. Her face was somewhat similar to Xian Yin's, but there was always a hint of a faint smile on her face. Wang Shigong. Those who died were from the Wang clan. Don't you feel sad? The girl in the snow-white robe had a faint smile on her face. Wang Shigong was squatting down, examining Wang Jiang's body. He said indifferently, "You deserve to die." He held a small purple jade bottle in his hand. Inside the jade bottle, there were many sparkling and translucent beads that formed a moving picture. This was a secret technique commonly used in the military camp. It could collect the memories of the dead before they died and identify the murderer. But besides collecting these memories, Wang Shigong also found some memories from not long ago. Among them was Wang Jiang taking advantage of his power to steal the invitation, then using the cosmos gourd in anger. In the end, he was stopped by Xian Yin, who then fabricated evidence to slander Suyu, causing him to issue a wanted order. Haha, Wang Jiang is really bold. He dared to deceive the great commander, Wang Shigong. The girl in the snow-white robe laughed. Wang Shigong's face was expressionless. I trusted others too easily and acted arbitrarily. I was wrong. Someone immediately revoke the wanted order, Wang Shigong ordered. But the girl in the snow-white robe stopped him. Wait. She looked at Wang Jiang's corpse, her eyes devoid of pity, only disgust. Wang Jiang deserved to die, but the light envoy of the Palace of Light is not someone you can kill so easily. What are you thinking? Wang Shigong creased his brows. Continue to put up the wanted order. When I find that person, I will teach him a lesson and protect the honor of the light envoy, the girl in the snow-white robe said with a hint of anger. Wang Shigong did not object. As the commander of the army, he had no right to make too many decisions when it came to the light envoy. I will listen to Envoy Xianhua's orders, Wang Shigong said. He did not doubt Xianhua's words. Even if Su Yu had displayed extraordinary abilities that could crush masters of the family, Xianhua was more than enough to deal with him, because she was the second-ranked envoy among the light envoys. Her abilities were unfathomable. Chapter 2289. It was rumored that 20 years ago, on the day when Xianhua broke through to the Pathmaster level, she coincidentally met the heartless Iron Constable who was famous in the Desolate Realm. The two exchanged martial arts, and the result was a draw. Today, 10 years later, her cultivation had been completely stabilized, but it was unknown how much her strength had improved. If she fought with the heartless Iron Constable again, it would be difficult to predict who would win. Hence, it would be difficult for Suyu to escape from his grasp. Xianhua took out a golden cicada. The cicada's wings were 5-colored, and as it flapped, a 5-colored rainbow appeared. It was very beautiful. The golden cicada flapped its wings and flew around the 4 corpses for a while. Then, with a squeak, it flew toward the holy city of light. Xianhua laughed involuntarily. Should I say that you are overconfident or audacious? After killing the envoy of light, you didn't run away immediately, but went to the holy city of light. Interesting. As soon as she finished speaking, she took out a writing brush and drew a pair of giant wings on her back. It was obviously a fake painting, but in the blink of an eye the painting became real. A pair of giant wings fell on her back, and she flew away at an amazing speed, catching up with the golden cicada. Several days later, in the holy city, Su Yu found the market in the Palace of Light was quite special. There were many shops that Su Yu had never seen before. For example, there were shops selling man-made divine beasts. The so-called man-made divine beasts were ordinary divine beast eggs injected with various special drugs to breed powerful and extraordinary mutated divine beasts. In addition, there were man-made Taoist bones and even man-made domains. These were things that Su Yu had never seen before. Nothing is too strange in this vast world. Su Yu was amazed. Even man-made domains could be made. He was quite tempted by the man-made domains, so he went to a shop to ask about them, but he was disappointed. The premise of the man-made domains was to have the assistance of someone who was proficient in this domain. That person had to forge a liquid magical treasure that was weaker than a real domain. After it was injected into a person's body, the person would have similar domain ability. This method would not help Su Yu break through the domain. Unless he could find someone who was proficient in the 8 domains, the other man-made things were the same. They all had their drawbacks and were of no benefit to Su Yu. However, one of the shops attracted Su Yu's attention. Man-made blood. As the name suggested, it was the blood of a man-made alien race. Su Yu's heart palpitated with excitement. To Su Yu, the Dragon Clan was undoubtedly an alien clan. He arrived at the shop, which was divided into 10 secret rooms. 9 of the stone doors were tightly shut, indicating that someone was using them. Only one room was left unoccupied. Su Yu, driven by his curiosity, was about to enter when a white shadow flashed before his eyes. A middle-aged man in a white robe with his hands clasped behind his back calmly teleported in front of them, blocking their way. His facial features were relaxed, and his eyes were clear and powerful. He sized Su Yu up and said, "Mister, are you an outsider? Don't you know the rules of the Ryuan shop?" Su Yu's heart shuddered. This person's cultivation was very strong, at least surpassing the level of an ordinary family master. He was almost at the level of Xiaoyan. "Yes, I came from the late autumn snowfield," Su Yu said. The late autumn snowfield was an ancient snowfield within the borders of the Palace of Light. It was sparsely populated and very few people lived there. No wonder. Although the white-robed, middle-aged man's cultivation was extremely powerful, he was not arrogant. He said, "Ryuanin has 10 secret rooms. Only 9 of them are open to outsiders. The last one is only for special people." Since he was running a business, how could he leave a room unused? What makes a special person? Su Yu couldn't help but ask. The white-robed, middle-aged man said, "It's very simple. Cultivate for 200 years, but reach the level of a pathmaster. Anyone who managed to reach the level of a pathmaster in 200 years was definitely a genius among geniuses. Only the flourishing 7-star civilizations could nurture a small number of such geniuses. He had set aside a secret room for these top-notch geniuses, which was a request of the Palace of Light. The top-notch geniuses enjoyed many privileges within the borders of the Palace of Light. This secret room was one of them. It could be seen how much the Palace of Light valued talented people. Su Yu's cultivation had obviously not reached the level of a pathmaster. However, the Dragon Clan's blood was extremely beneficial to him, so he couldn't miss this opportunity. "Although I haven't reached the level of a pathmaster yet, is my power enough?" Su Yu asked. The white-robed, middle-aged man was surprised. Where did this youth in front of him get his confidence from? The gap between a half-step pathmaster and a pathmaster was like an ant, while a half-step pathmaster was like a giant elephant. The gap between them was like the gap between heaven and earth. Moreover, the number of half-step pathmasters was much lower than the number of geniuses who managed to reach the level of a pathmaster after cultivating for 200 years. At the very least, the Palace of Light had never produced a half-step pathmaster who had reached the level of a pathmaster. Oh, can you? The white-robed, middle-aged man chuckled, then reminded him, the so-called power refers to one's physique, soul, cultivation techniques, and divine techniques. It doesn't include powerful treasures. He was implying that Suyu might have misunderstood the definition of power. I can, Suyu said firmly. The white-robed, middle-aged man was really surprised, and he wondered, can this youth really reach the level of a path master without relying on treasures? Fine, but I need to test it first, the white-robed, middle-aged man said after pondering for a moment. How do I test it? The white-robed, middle-aged man pointed at himself. I will stand here without moving. If you can make me take a step back, you will pass the test. With his terrifying cultivation, even an ordinary path master might not be able to make him take a step back if he didn't put up any resistance. Such a request was actually quite difficult to make. However, when Suyu heard it, he relaxed a little. It was quite simple. His opponent's cultivation was only at the level of a family master, but Suyu's physique was also much stronger than a family master's. If his opponent only defended and didn't attack, it would be easy to make him take a step back. Fine, let's begin. The white-robed, middle-aged man stood with his hands clasped behind his back. He didn't even activate a simple defensive barrier. He was prepared to block Suyu's attack with his body. After all, he was just a trifling half-step path master, so why would he need to defend himself? Suyu pondered it for a moment, then decided to go all out. After all, his opponent was an expert who was far stronger than him, and it would be a pity if he let his guard down and missed this opportunity. Fine. Senior, be careful, Suyu said slowly. Then he released his cultivation. A wave of extremely pure desolation energy surged out like a tide. The white-robed, middle-aged man nodded slowly. Your cultivation has reached perfection. Not bad. But if that was all, how could it possibly shake him? Then, Suyu also released his soul, which was close to the path realm. Your soul is 90% path realm, not bad. The white-robed, middle-aged man was slightly disappointed. There wasn't anything special about this human youth, so it was impossible to force him to take a step back. After Suyu revealed his two abilities, he strode forward like a bolt of lightning. His fists were tucked under his armpits, while his energy was contained. Senior, be careful. Suyu warned him one last time before he punched his opponent's chest. Just as they were about to collide, Suyu didn't hold back his physique any longer, and he turned into a golden half-dragon, erupting with a power that far surpassed a family master's. The white-robed, middle-aged man, who didn't care at first, was slightly surprised when he saw Suyu turn into a half-dragon. Delight appeared on his face as he said, "A half-dragon body? You really gave me a pleasant surprise." He secretly made up his mind that even if Suyu couldn't force him to take a step back, he would still allow him to cultivate inside for a day for the sake of Suyu's courage in challenging him. In an instant, he stretched out his arms and caught Suyu's fists. He wanted to easily neutralize them, but when they came into contact, a terrifying power that could topple mountains and overturn the seas surged toward him. The white-robed, middle-aged man's heart skipped a beat, and he immediately increased his strength in an attempt to push Suyu's hands back. Unexpectedly, when he pushed, he was shocked to find that his strength was insignificant in front of Suyu, and he couldn't block it at all. His arms were pushed back by Suyu's fists, and they were about to hit his chest. How could the white-robed, middle-aged man still dare to be arrogant? He immediately used the strength of a path master to form a defensive barrier on the surface of his body. When Suyu's fists came crashing down, the entire defensive barrier was dented and dented. Moreover, after a violent tremor, it finally shattered with a pop. What? The white-robed, middle-aged man was shocked. Feeling the two deadly fists about to hit him, the white-robed, middle-aged man had no choice but to display his own domain. A layer of dark green domain was attached to the surface of his body. However, What shocked the white-robed middle-aged man was that his domain was like a piece of paper in front of Suyu's fists, and it was directly shattered. In the end, the fist still landed squarely on his chest. Fortunately, his arms, the rainproof barrier, and the domain had blocked most of the power of the fists. Therefore, the power that landed on his chest was less than 20%. However, the power of 20% still caused the blood in the white-robed, middle-aged man's body to churn. It was as if he was walking on the road and being rammed by an iron bull. He was knocked back repeatedly on the spot. He staggered back 7 or 8 steps, and he was about to fall to the ground and end up in a sorry state. Fortunately, he reacted quickly, and with the help of the remaining strength in his body, he somersaulted in the air, dispelling the power in his body, and barely managed to stand. He touched his endlessly churning chest, and a dull pain struck his chest. "Elder, are you all right?" Suyu walked over with concern. The white-robed, middle-aged man retreated subconsciously, and at the same time, he displayed his defensive barrier. He seemed extremely fearful. After a while, he realized that he had lost his composure, and hurriedly put down his hand. With an embarrassed look on his face, he coughed dryly. "Ahem, I'm fine." He had been humiliated for once. He was almost beaten to the ground by a punch from a junior. No one would believe it if word got out. However, compared to his own humiliation, the white-robed middle-aged man was shocked by Suyu's strength, and his heart was in turmoil. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have believed that such a nature-defying demon existed in this world. The 10 great emissaries of the Bright Light Palace, even the one who ranked first, could not achieve such an achievement in terms of physique. However, he felt that it was very strange. Why had he never seen Suyu before? A person with such a powerful physique could claim to be the number 1 person in his generation. However, such a person had never been heard of, as if he had appeared out of thin air. How could he not be surprised? Chapter 2290. Suyu said, "My surname is Su." Su. The white-robed, middle-aged man quickly searched for the Su family in his mind, but there was nothing. The white-robed, middle-aged man looked Suyu up and down again and exclaimed, "Mr. Su's physique is simply shocking. May I ask who your teacher is?" He was really curious about where such a person had come from. Suyu frowned slightly. "Is it the rule to use the secret room to get to the bottom of it?" Hearing that, the white-robed, middle-aged man realized he had lost his composure. In the world of martial arts, it had always been taboo to inquire about others. "Sorry, I was just curious. Please don't misunderstand, Mr. Su." Suyu nodded. "Oh, then do I meet the requirements to enter?" The white-robed, middle-aged man's mouth twitched. "If you don't meet the requirements, who else can?" "Okay, please feel free to use the secret room." The white-robed, middle-aged man stepped aside and revealed the secret room. Suyu nodded and came to the front of the secret room. On one side of the secret room's door, there was a notch. You just needed to swipe the card and you could enter it to train. Then, you could swipe it again before leaving. The secret room would charge you according to the length of time you spent training. Suyu took out his gold card and swiped it. The white-robed, middle-aged man's pupils shrank. Gold card? A gold card that could only be obtained with 500 million Dao coins? What was the background of this young man? The white-robed, middle-aged man had wanted to inquire about Suyu's background, but seeing that Suyu was carrying a gold card, he gave up the idea. If a young man had a gold card, who knew what level of mission the influence or elders behind him was assigned to? If he were to discover a taboo existence while exploring, his life would be in danger. After entering the secret room, Suyu closed the door and checked the situation inside. Inside the secret room, there was an empty pond about half an acre in size. Around the empty pond, there were 18 kinds of water outlets shaped like beast heads. In the center of the empty pond, there was a crystal plate which showed 10,000 kinds of special alien races. Suyu rummaged around and found the blood of the dragon race. However, when he saw the price, Su Yu's mouth twitched violently. The price of artificial dragon blood was 10 million Dao coins a day. In other words, Su Yu could use the artificial dragon blood to train here for 10 days, which would be 100 million Dao coins. This was Su Yu's entire fortune, unless he sold all the Dao artifact fairy embryos he had. Those who aren't geniuses, nurtured by superpowers, don't even have the right to try it. Even Su Yu couldn't help but feel sorry for them. However, compared to wealth, martial strength was more important. Just as he was about to choose the Dragon Clan's techniques, his arm suddenly felt hot. Shockingly, the 9 jade spiritual pearl had fluctuated. The little Kylan ignored the space restriction of the 9 jade spiritual pearl again and stuck its cute head out. Wow! I think I can feel the treasure! Su Yu's eyes twitched. Did you learn it from Xiao Dai? Wasn't Xiao Dai the only one who had the habit of coveting treasures? Su Xiao, Su Yu is you. You, Xiao Yu jumped. Dai? Kentucky Xiao Yu Su Yu and King, Su Yu thought. Su Yu thought. Su and said. Su Yu, Su. Su and Su Yu and Yu. Su, King, Yu, Yu. Su Yu, in other words, it cost 100 million Dao coins a day. Su Yu's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Why was Kylan's blood so expensive? But thinking about it carefully, in this world, dragons were common, but Chilants were uncommon. Su Yu had never heard of a second Kylan except the god Kylan of the Star River. Including Kylan, it was just a clone left behind by the god Kylan. Kylan's blood was not asking for 100 million Dao coins for no reason. 100 million Dao coins. Xiao Kylan's eyes widened. Is my blood so valuable? What do you think? Su Yu glared at it. Xiao Kylan shrank its neck and said, I'm telling you, don't even think about it. If you dare to sell my blood, I will run away from home. Su Yu smiled and pretended to be enlightened. Oh, I almost forgot. Xiao Kylan, you have been with me for so many years, eating and drinking for me. Isn't it time for you to repay me? Master wants to train here, but he is short of money. Why don't you sell a few bottles of your blood for money? Xiao Kylan trembled with anger. You are a beast. Huh. Su Yu laughed. He scratched the crystal with the golden card and touched the Kylan's blood. Suddenly, a large amount of purple Kylan's blood gushed into the pool from the 18 outlets. Xiao Kylan was stunned and looked at Su Yu in surprise. Su Yu chuckled. What are you waiting for? Time is money. Xiao Kylan came back to its senses. Its eyes were filled with tears. That was 100 million Dao coins. It did not expect Su Yu to choose the Kylan's blood, but, Master, I am so touched. Xiao Kylan rubbed its eyes. How can I repay you? Do you want to marry me? Su Yu looked at the form of Xiao Kylan and was speechless. Even if he wanted to, he could not bear to ask for it. There was a trace of shyness in the little Chilant's eyes as it said, If I break through to the Dao Lord realm, then I'll actually be able to transform into a human permanently. At that time, I won't resist anything you do to me, Master. Puff! Su Yu almost vomited blood. He kicked it into the pool. What nonsense are you talking about? Hurry up and cultivate. Su Yu had raised Xiao Kylan since it was a child. He had watched it grow from an egg to its current form. Even if it turned into a human, Su Yu would not have any improper thoughts about it. After falling into the pool, Xiao Kylan looked at Su Yu with deep gratitude. Then, it hurried to absorb the man-made Kylan's blood. The Kylan's blood entered its body through its pores and fused with the real Kylan's blood. The purity of the man-made Kylan's blood was not as good as the real Kylan's blood, but it still contained a trace of the real Kylan's blood. Therefore, as it absorbed the blood, Xiao Kylan's body underwent obvious changes. First of all, it became bigger, and the color of its scales became fiery red. A pair of purple crystalline eyes turned dark purple. The most important thing was that his cultivation was continuously rising from the divine warrior level of heaven and earth. It ignored the bottleneck all the way to the half-step path master level. Then it broke through the path master level. A pitch-black image appeared above its head. It was the realm. Su Yu's eyes were wide open. Did it break through? How could this be? Any living being that wanted to break through to become a Tao Lord had to undergo the transformation of their body, soul, and laws. However, after absorbing some of the Qilin's blood, the little Qilin skipped the Tao transformation stage and had a Tao body, Tao soul, and domain. His mind was at a loss. This was absolutely illogical. Was it the effect of the local blood? It shouldn't be. If the mutated blood here had the heaven-defying effect of allowing one to break through to become a Taoist lord, how could there only be 100 million Tao coins? They probably wouldn't sell it at all. Was it because of the little Qilin? So you fell into deep thought. As one of the last 9 divine warriors of heaven and earth in the ancient god realm of 9 dragons, was the Cauldron divine warrior really just a divine warrior of heaven and earth? He had long wondered why the divine emperor of heaven and earth, the divine emperor of heaven and earth, could give Zhan Wushuang a 4-piece set of emperor luck. He didn't think so before, but now that he was in the great beginning realm, he could feel that each piece of the emperor's set was more terrifying than the last. He couldn't help but be confused. How could a mere divine emperor of heaven and earth do something that not even a Tao Lord could do? The little Qilin in front of him was behaving strangely as well. As the clone of the Qilin sovereign, he didn't even need to undergo Tao transformation to become a Tao Lord. Moreover, his rank as a Tao Lord was still rising. One day later, the Qilin blood in the whole pool was completely extracted, and the aura emitted by the little Qilin had reached the level of a family master. Su Yu wasn't the only one who was shocked. Even the little Qilin itself was so surprised that it couldn't close its mouth. I broke through to the level of a Tao Lord? It ran up to Su Yu and kicked his thigh with its front hoof. Hiss! What are you doing? Even with Su Yu's strong physique, he was in so much pain that he gasped and glared at it. The little Qilin lifted its hoof and said, I'm trying to see if I'm dreaming. Well, it doesn't seem like it. Su Yu kicked it angrily, and the little Qilin rolled on the ground. I think you're still dreaming. How dare you use me as a test subject? The little Qilin stood up and shook its head. Its face was full of confusion and excitement. Although I don't know why, I seem to be a Tao Lord now, and I can transform forever. Master, who do you want me to transform into? Think about it carefully. Once I transform into a human, I can't change my form for the rest of my life. You only have one chance, so you should cherish it. Be serious. Su Yu pinched its face. When he got closer to it, he discovered that the little Qilin had grown more than twice its size. It was now as tall as Su Yu's shoulder. Its skin was extremely hard, and even a Tao artifact might not be able to harm it. Let's see where your domain is, Su Yu said. The little Qilin immediately released its domain, as if it was showing off. A pitch-black image hovered around its body. Su Yu's heart thumped, and he took out an abandoned Tao artifact and threw it into the image. However, the shocking thing was that the Tao artifact turned into a pitch-black powder on the spot. Is this the void domain? Su Yu asked in shock. A Tao artifact was a magical treasure that was condensed by the Tao Lord's own Tao when he became a Tao Lord. It could be said to be the best among all magical treasures, and it was extremely hard. Even a person like Xia Yayan couldn't destroy a Tao artifact. However, the little Qilin's domain was really unimaginable. It's not the void domain. It's the chaos domain. Some unfamiliar things appeared in the little Qilin's mind. They didn't come from the Qilin Emperor, but from an even more mysterious existence. Chaos? Above the void domain is chaos. The little Qilin murmured. Before the great beginning realm was created, it was in a state of chaos. Chapter 2291. It was only when the sacred mountain appeared that the grand beginning Qi gradually transformed into the primal beginning realm that it was today. Little Qilin's domain was actually a stretch of chaos. As expected, the 9 monarchs of the ancient god realm of 9 dragons weren't simple at all. Put away your domain, and don't use it unless it's absolutely necessary, Suyu instructed. Who wouldn't be tempted by a divine beast that could create primal chaos? It was likely that even the path masters of the mysterious Dao Palace, who had never interfered with worldly affairs, would want to get their hands on them. Therefore, the little Qilin's primal chaos domain could not be revealed in front of others. All right. The little Qilin retracted its domain, and a trace of exhaustion appeared in its eyes. It said, "Supporting this domain consumes a lot of my soul force. It seems like I can't use it often. It couldn't be any better. You can rest at the side. I will cultivate in peace for a while." Suyu jumped into the dried pond and touched the dragon clan's mutant blood. Immediately, a large amount of artificial dragon blood poured into the pool. As soon as he came into contact with the dragon blood, his entire body sizzled as if it was burning. A wave of burning pain seeped from Suyu's skin to his flesh and finally reached his bones. The pain was unbearable. However, after experiencing the training of the heavenly dragon body, the burning pain at the moment was nothing more than a frown to Suyu. Under the intense burning, the artificial dragon blood slowly entered Suyu's body and fused with the dragon blood within it. Although there was little real dragon blood in the man-made dragon blood, there was a lot of it. After absorbing for a day, Suyu realized that the dragon blood in his body had doubled. Once he transformed into the half-dragon form, his physique would be enhanced to the next level. And this was only the first day. With excitement in his heart, he continued to cultivate. Half a month later, on this day, the white-robed middle-aged man was meditating in the shop. Silently he opened his eyes. A pretty girl in a snow-white robe walked into the shop with a smile. He immediately stood up and cupped his fists. "Welcome, Miss Xianhua. Your presence brings light to our humble shop." Xianhua covered her mouth and smiled. "Uncle Bai, you're being too serious." They had known each other for a long time. Xianhua used the golden cicada to track Suyu's whereabouts. However, after Suyu entered the sacred city, it was as if he had vanished into thin air. After searching bitterly to no avail, Xianhua could only give up for now and cultivate instead. "Are there any more training rooms?" Xianhua asked. The white-robed middle-aged man said apologetically, "Miss Xianhua, you came at a bad time. It's already full." Xianhua was surprised. That special secret room was also occupied. Exactly. Xianhua found this strange. Because special conditions were required to enter that secret room, no one could enter it for several years. Coincidentally, someone had occupied it. Which emissary of light is it? Xianhua asked naturally. The white-robed, middle-aged man shook his head and said, "No, he's a nobody." There was a hint of surprise on Xianhua's face, but she did not pay it any mind. The territory of the Light Palace was so vast, it was not strange for 1 or 2 unknown dragons to appear. The secret chamber is gone. "If Miss Xianhua doesn't mind, I can spar with you," the middle-aged man in white said. Xianhua agreed readily. The reason why she was able to use a brush to draw something out of nothingness was because of some kind of mutant blood. And the one who understood the mutant blood the most was this owner. Sparring with him would allow Shao Qin to receive pointers from him. Soon after, the two of them started sparring in the spacious hall. After thousands of moves, Xianhua was sweating profusely. The white-robed middle-aged man allowed a breath and said, "Miss Xianhua's improvement is godly. Soon, I will not be a match for Miss Xianhua." Xianhua smiled charmingly. "In your opinion, what are my chances of winning in this martial arts contest?" "You will definitely be in the top 2, the white-robed middle-aged man said after seriously analyzing. In his heart, he added that if the silver-haired human in the secret chamber did not make a move, if he made a move, Xianhua could only be in third place. The white-robed middle-aged man was very clear about the limits of Xianhua's strength, but that human had only displayed his physique from start to finish. He could not see the limits of his strength at all. If the two of them really fought, the white-robed middle-aged man was more optimistic about that human. Of course, he would not say this out loud in case he caused trouble for that human disciple. Still second, a hint of unwillingness flashed across Xianhua's face. The title of the number 1 emissary of light had always been dominated by one person. Xianhua could only be in second place all year round. How could she be willing to accept that? The white-robed middle-aged man also felt pity for Xianhua. Don't be discouraged. Actually, with your strength, you would definitely be the number 1 emissary of light in any generation. It's just that heavens will make a fool of us. There is now a daughter of destiny. Xianhua clenched her fists lightly, a hint of bitterness spreading from the corner of her mouth. Over 100 years ago, within the Palace of Light, everyone had the same dream on the same day. An extremely beautiful woman descended from the sky and became the most dazzling sun in the Palace of Light. Everyone thought that it was just a dream, until the greatest ceremony of the Palace of Light, the woman in everyone's dream really descended from the sky. She was called the Daughter of Destiny. His talent was extraordinary and peerless. No one could compare to him. In less than 100 years, she broke through from the Overlord realm to the Tao Lord realm. And 20 years ago, she reached the family head realm. All the prodigies of the Palace of Light did not have the right to call themselves prodigies in front of her. She was like an extremely dazzling sun, making them dim and dull in comparison. Now that 20 years had passed, no one knew what terrifying cultivation level the Daughter of Destiny had reached. Because she had been in seclusion for many years, only a few people had the chance to come into contact with her. The white-robed, middle-aged man in front of her was one of them. If we fight now, how many rounds can I spar with her? Xianhua asked. Back, when the emissaries of light were ranked, she had fought with the Daughter of Destiny and lost miserably in 4 moves. The white-robed, middle-aged man was silent for a long time, then slowly said, 1 move. What? Xianhua's eyes widened. 1 move. The white-robed, middle-aged man nodded with a solemn expression. Yes, 1 move. Today's Daughter of Destiny is many times stronger than 20 years ago. When I sparred with her, I only managed to last 2 moves. Xianhua felt as if something was stuck in her throat, and she could not speak. For many years, she had been training hard with the goal of becoming the Daughter of Destiny, hoping to surpass her one day. However, the despairing reality was that after so many years, the gap between them did not close. Instead, it grew further and further, to the extent that it was depressing. The white-robed, middle-aged man consoled her. Just as I said, she can't be compared to her peers at all. If there really is a comparison, there's no such thing as a genius in the world. Being in the same generation as the Daughter of Destiny should be the sorrow of the current generation of prodigies. Xianhua was deeply agitated. Apart from the bitterness, she became even more determined to cultivate. She cupped her fists towards the white-robed, middle-aged man. I'll go back to comprehend for a few days. Goodbye. The white-robed, middle-aged man nodded. That's good too. The Daughter of Destiny probably won't participate in the martial arts hunt this time. You have a high chance of getting first place. If you can receive the light divine deer's teachings, you might have a chance to increase your strength to the next level and catch up to the Daughter of Destiny. The martial arts hunt was a grand event that was held once every 50 years by the Radiant Palace. It invited all the prodigies within the realm to chase after the light divine deer together. If anyone could capture it and receive its recognition, the light divine deer would use its powerful soul to transmit an ancient cultivation technique to that person. The ancient cultivation technique was different from the cultivation techniques and divine skills of the outer world. It was a nature-defying technique passed down from the previous era. Its power was unparalleled, even comparable to the realm. Only 8-star civilizations had this technique. It was usually used by the creatures of 8-star civilizations as a supplementary cultivation technique outside of the realm. However, in the outer world, the ancient cultivation technique basically didn't exist. The light divine deer was one of the few super divine beasts that had records of the ancient cultivation technique. However, it didn't pass on the ancient cultivation technique easily. The only time it had passed on the light seal was to the first-generation palace master of the Palace of Light. Relying on this powerful ancient cultivation technique, the first-generation palace master was able to establish the Palace of Light. Since then, the light divine deer had been regarded as the protector of the Palace of Light. The martial arts hunt was held every 50 years, hoping that a fated person would appear and receive the light divine deer's teachings. However, after so many years, the light divine deer had never passed on its teachings again. Even so, the deity hunt continued, and it had not stopped even once. I must get first place in the martial arts hunt. Xian Hua's eyes were filled with determination. Only by receiving the teachings could she possibly defeat the Daughter of Destiny. Several days later, Su Yu slowly woke up from his seclusion. After a full 20 days of training, the dragon blood in his body had reached a shocking level. Even if he didn't deliberately activate the heavenly dragon body, a layer of faintly discernible dragon scales appeared on the surface of his body, and his whole body carried a heavy pressure of the dragon clan. Occasionally, an inexplicable dragon roar could be heard from within his blood. The pressure of his blood made the little Kylan beside him feel a little uncomfortable. The dragon blood in your body is more than that of a real dragon, isn't it? The little Kylan smacked its lips. If the people of the dragon clan met you, they wouldn't dare say that you aren't a dragon. Su Yu smiled as he clenched his fists. A crackling sound spread from his finger bones. The powerful and overbearing power was like an uncontrollable wild horse galloping in his body. Now that he had punched out, even Xiaoyan would have to take it seriously. His physique was unprecedentedly strengthened. Now, all he had to do was quickly transform his soul. Let's go. Su Yu opened the stone door and swiped the gold card in his hand across the notch. Suddenly, an alarm sounded from the notch, reminding the customer that the card had insufficient Tao coins. Su Yu was embarrassed, including the little Kylan. He had spent a total of 300 million Tao coins this time. The middle-aged man in the white robe heard the alarm and rushed over, chuckling. Mr. Su, you've come out of seclusion. Your seclusion wasn't short at all. Others would go into seclusion for a day at most. But Su Yu had gone for 21 days. Now, he didn't even have enough Tao coins in his card. Boss, I have limited Tao coins on hand, but I have a lot of resources that can pay off the debt. Su Yu had no choice but to bring out the many doctrine artifact, divine embryos that he had plundered from the Tani Cavern. He didn't know how much the doctrine artifact, divine embryos of the Palace of Light were worth. Pay off the debt? The middle-aged man in the white robe frowned slightly. Mr. Su, to tell you the truth, I didn't open this shop alone. There are several other partners. I can naturally agree to pay off the debt with items, but I'm afraid the other partners. Su Yu's heart tightened. This seemed to be a little troublesome. Chapter 2292. Boss, you can take a look first and decide later. Su Yu took out a vat of water that was rich in Genesis energy. The white-robed, middle-aged man was displeased by Su Yu's coercion. His impression of Su Yu had dropped significantly. How much do you want for a vat of water? The white-robed, middle-aged man asked patiently. Su Yu thought about it, then answered seriously, 300 million Tao coins. The vat of water before him contained more than half of the Genesis energy he had obtained from the Great Void Cave over the past 10 years. Selling it for 300 million Dao coins was only a discount because he was unable to repay his debts. If he sold it at full price, for 100 million Dao coins would be more than enough. Even if he met someone who was in a hurry to buy it, 500 million was entirely possible. You must be joking, Mr. Su. The white-robed, middle-aged man wanted to laugh, but he couldn't. Every portion of mutated blood is made from real mutated blood. The cost is too high. Su Yu understood this point even without saying. The Kylan blood alone was indescribably precious. Haha, boss, why don't you take a look at this vat of water first? Su Yu opened the lid of the vat, and the surging Genesis energy gushed out. The white-robed, middle-aged man was stunned for a moment. Then his expression changed drastically. This is Genesis energy. Genesis energy was a divine item used to enhance the realm of the Pathmasters, and it was often priceless. Many people might not be able to buy Genesis energy, even if they offered double the price. Why? Because those who had Genesis energy would either use it for themselves or sell it to those at the peak of the martial path in exchange for their help. Basically, no one would exchange Genesis energy for money. Therefore, the white-robed, middle-aged man's mind went blank when he first saw the Genesis energy. He couldn't help but wonder if it was a scam. After all, who would take it out to sell? What do you think? Su Yu asked with a smile. The white-robed, middle-aged man was deep in thought. However, while he was hesitating, dozens of Pathmasters sensed the Genesis energy that had just gushed out and descended from the sky. Genesis energy. The dozens of Pathmasters with different levels of cultivation were shocked. Among them was the master of civilization, who was slightly more powerful than the master of the family. The white-robed, middle-aged man seemed to have woken up from a dream. If anyone in the world could forge Genesis energy, he would have been famous outside of Wasteland. The jar of water in front of him was truly made from Genesis chi. Deal! The white-robed, middle-aged man waved his hand and snatched the water jar. He was afraid that Su Yu would go back on his word. His heart trembled with excitement. This was the primordial chi that could only be encountered by luck. However, just as he was about to snatch it, several Dao Lords who were no weaker than him released their domains and stopped him from taking the water jar. Wait! A Dao Lord whose entire body was transparent like an ice sculpture shouted. A hint of fear flashed across the white-robed, middle-aged man's eyes. Dao Master Ice Flame, what do you mean? Dao Master Ice Flame was a famous Dao Master of the Light Palace. His strength could be ranked in the top 10, and he was a mysterious expert. Everyone had to be polite to him. If I'm not mistaken, you're trading with someone, right? Dao Master Ice Flame looked around, searching for a possible seller. The white-robed, middle-aged man's heart tightened. This Dao Master Ice Flame was famous for being rude and overbearing. This has nothing to do with you. The white-robed, middle-aged man secretly exerted his strength, hoping to snatch the water jar. However, Dao Master Ice Flame and several Dao Lords held the water jar tightly and did not let go. Knowing that the white-robed middle-aged man was unwilling to reveal the seller, Dao Master Ice Flame shouted, "My friend who sold the primordial chi, please come forward and have a chat." His eyes were fixed on several Dao Lords with higher cultivation. Only they could obtain so much primordial chi. What's the matter? A calm voice fell into his ears. Dao Master Ice Flame followed the voice, and his eyes fell on Su Yu, who he had not paid attention to before. He hesitated slightly. "Did you sell this jar of primordial chi?" Su Yu asked. "Can you find a second seller?" Hiss! Dao Master Ice Flame was shocked. The primordial chi actually came from a half-step Dao Lord? The other Dao Lords were also surprised and looked at Su Yu curiously. They could not believe that the primordial chi that the Dao Lords dreamed of came from this human. It should belong to the force behind him, or some big shot. They thought subconsciously. Dao Master Ice Flame did not dare to show any contempt. Instead, he was very polite. He, who had always been cold, squeezed out a stiff smile, and said, "My friend, what kind of deal did you have with the owner of the Ryuan shop?" Su Yu said casually, "I used the secret room and owed a debt of 300 million. Can't I use this to pay off the debt?" Dao Master Ice Flame's eyes suddenly burst with dazzling light. Pay off the debt? In this world, there was actually someone who used the primordial qi to pay off the debt? Moreover, the value of this jar of primordial qi was obviously far more than 300 million. If it was sold to those old monsters who were in urgent need, it could be sold for 600 million. My friend, how about this? I will pay the 300 million debt for you, and you give me this jar of primordial qi? Dao Master Ice Flame immediately set his eyes on the item. Hearing this, the white-robed, middle-aged man had a bad feeling. When he was about to stop him, Su Yu said, "No problem." It did not matter who he gave the primordial qi to. The white-robed, middle-aged man said anxiously, "Mr. Su, you can't. You promised to pay off the debt with this item first." Su Yu said indifferently, "But the owner said that your partner did not want to pay off the debt with an item. Now that someone is willing to give you the Dao coins directly, it is naturally the best." At this moment, the white-robed, middle-aged man wanted to slap himself. Why did he hesitate just now and doubt the authenticity of the primordial qi? If he had accepted it at that time, how could Dao Master Ice Flame and the others have come to rob it for no reason? Gritting his teeth, the white-robed, middle-aged man said, "Mr. Su, how about this? Give me this jar of primordial qi, and I will give you another 50 million Dao coins. How about that?" Su Yu was certainly tempted. He only had 100 million Dao coins in his hands. It seemed like a lot, but it was not enough for a 7-star civilization. It was better to have more Dao coins. "My friend's surname is Su. My friend Su, I will pay 400 million Dao coins for this jar of primordial qi. If you agree, I will exchange it with you immediately." Dao Master Ice Flame was very generous. The other Path Masters also did not want to miss such a great opportunity, and they all stated their high prices. Soon, the price was pushed to the sky-high price of 500 million Dao coins. The white-robed, middle-aged man watched the price rise steadily, almost doubling. He wanted to cry, but had no tears. Everything should have belonged to him. "Okay, 500 million Dao coins deal." Su Yu looked at Dao Master Ice Flame and smiled. Although the price could rise a little more, it was better to stop before going too far. More and more people gathered around. If this continued, he might not be able to leave even if he wanted to. Dao Master Ice Flame heaved a sigh of relief and took out a gold card. "There are 500 million Dao coins in it. Please check." Su Yu checked it in person and confirmed that there were indeed 500 million Dao coins in it. Then, he handed the jar of primordial qi to him. After obtaining the primordial qi, Dao Master Ice Flame did not dare to stay any longer. He cupped his fists at Su Yu and left. Su Yu turned around and transferred 300 million Dao coins to the white-robed, middle-aged man, who had a complicated expression on his face. He said calmly, "We are even. Goodbye." As soon as he turned around, he was met with many pairs of fiery eyes. Su Yu smiled bitterly in his heart. It was true that he had earned 200 million Dao coins, but he had become a hot commodity in everyone's eyes. It would take a lot of effort to get out of their sight. "Mr. Su, why don't you go back to the shop and have some tea before you leave?" The white-robed, middle-aged man's eyes lit up when he saw Su Yu's predicament. Su Yu did not refuse. He cupped his fists and said, "Thank you for your hospitality." He was not afraid that the white-robed, middle-aged man would dare to attack him secretly. Besides, he had many tricks up his sleeves. Just the chaotic domain of the little Kylan was enough to make him suffer. The white-robed, middle-aged man could not contain his joy. He immediately led the way with a smile. "Mr. Su, please." After entering, the white-robed, middle-aged man turned around and glared at the many Path Masters who were about to step in. He said expressionlessly, "Sorry, Ryuan's shop is closed today. Bang. Then, with a bang, the door was completely closed. He even activated the defensive seal, forbidding anyone from entering. This action caused many pathmasters to curse angrily. Bai Qingsong is planning to take all the benefits for himself. This is too much. How can he monopolize something like the primordial qi? Just wait and see. It won't be easy for Bai Qingsong to monopolize the primordial qi. In the back hall, Bai Qingsong's face was full of smiles. He personally poured tea for Su Yu and said, "Mr. Su, rest here for a while. It won't be too late to leave after the people outside arrive." Su Yu chuckled. Without further ado, he took out a palm-sized bottle. It was also filled with primordial qi. "Boss, you are very considerate. However, I still have some matters to attend to. I'm afraid I can't stay for long. There should be a back door in your shop. If you take me away, I will give you this bottle of primordial qi." He was now a wanted criminal. Perhaps the wanted list had not reached the holy city yet. If he did not leave now, when would he? Hearing this, Bai Qingsong's eyes shone brightly. He thanked Su Yu profusely. However, his appetite was obviously not limited to a small bottle of primordial qi. Just as he was about to say something, Su Yu saw through his thoughts. He said, "This bottle is the last one I have. If you are not satisfied with it, then forget it." As he spoke, he was about to take the jade bottle back. Bai Qingsong reacted quickly. He immediately stepped forward and grabbed the bottle. He said hurriedly, There is a back door." Bai Qingsong said, "The Ryuan shop is such an important shop, so it naturally has a way out. There is an extremely high-grade ancient formation in the backyard. Once it is activated, it can teleport away soundlessly. Even the pathmasters would find it difficult to detect the teleportation ripples. It is very safe." That was good. "Mr. Su, are you in such a hurry to leave so that you can take part in the deer hunt?" Bai Qingsong asked. Su Yu was taken aback. "Zhuolu." Bai Qingsong froze. Could it be that Su Yu had not come from the late autumn snowfield for the deer hunt? "Mr. Su, you do not know about the deer hunt." Bai Qingsong said, "This is one of the most prestigious events of the Bright Light Palace." Su Yu was not interested in the deer hunt. He casually explained, "I have always been in seclusion deep in the mountains. I have never stepped out of the outside world. I do not know what the deer hunt is." Was he a reclusive youth? No wonder he did not understand so many things. Bai Qingsong's smile became wider. He said in detail, "Since Mr. Su has come to the holy city at this time, you must not miss this great opportunity. If you are lucky enough to receive the techniques of the divine light deer, you will reach the heavens in a single step." Wait. Chapter 2293. "Please explain in detail," Su Yu said. Seeing Su Yu's interest, Bai Qingsong explained the deer hunt in detail. After listening, Su Yu's eyes glowed with a deep light. He might not be interested in ancient cultivation techniques, but the antler of the divine light deer was something he wanted. If he could get it, he could shorten 10 years of hard work and transform his soul into Tao in a short period of time. But the divine light deer was under the strict protection of many pathmasters. It would be extremely difficult to obtain the antler from it. Apart from that, even if you do not receive the divine light deer's techniques, you can still obtain prizes based on your ranking. Su Yu was thinking about the deer antler, so he was obviously distracted. He said, "Oh, what prizes?" For example, first place 100 million Dao coins, plus a portion of Genesis energy. Bai Qingsong suddenly realized how useless first place was to Su Yu. Normally, Genesis energy would be a prize that everyone would go crazy over. But to Su Yu, it was like a beggar asking a rich man for a steamed bun. He smiled bitterly. Second place is the antler of the divine light deer. Third place is... Wait! Su Yu's eyes narrowed, surprised. "Antler? Yes. Mr. Su, is there a problem?" Bai Qingsong was surprised. In his opinion, if first place was so useless to Suyu, the prize for second place would be even more insignificant. Who would have thought he would show such an expression? Isn't the divine light, dear the guardian divine, beast of the palace of light? How can you cut the antler from its body? Suyu was puzzled. Bai Qingsong laughed. So that's what Mr. Su is curious about. The reason is simple. Every 10 years, the divine light deer sheds a layer of antler. These antlers have been collected over the years and have accumulated a large amount. At least, they are not as rare as Genesis energy. So that's why. Suyu was delighted. This trip to the holy city was not in vain. As long as he could get second place in the deer hunt, he could obtain the antler. There was no need for any additional risks. Mr. Su, if you are interested, you should hurry. The deer hunt is about to begin. Any later, and you will miss the opportunity to register. Bai Qingsong kindly reminded. Suyu cupped his fists. Thank you, farewell. Bai Qingsong immediately brought him to the teleportation portal in the backyard. He cupped his fists and said, Good luck, young Master Su. Suyu nodded, stepped into the transportation portal and left quietly. When he reappeared, he was in a remote corner of the holy city. He immediately went to the northeast corner of the holy city. This was the famous heavenly palace of the martial path of the Palace of Light. The heavenly palace only had 2 levels. Usually, only the first level was open to the martial arts experts of the world to spar with each other and rank them accordingly. The radiant list of the Radiant Palace originated from the Martial Path Heavenly Palace. The Honorable Martial List listed all the experts in the country according to their strength, and according to their strength, they were ranked. The first level was open all year round, but the second level would only be open once every 50 years during the Zhuelu competition. Only a group of people had the qualifications to step onto it, paragons of the generation. Moreover, only those whose strengths had attained the Downlord realm would be allowed to ascend it. No one else was allowed to enter the second floor. Suyu arrived at the registration area. There were 2 requirements for registration. The first was to attain the Downlord realm, and the second was to provide proof of identity. Suyu pondered for a while, and an idea flashed in his mind. He took out a space storage device. This was Wang Jiuyang's space storage device. He had taken it away on a whim. He searched inside and found a token. There was no name on it, only the word Wang. This was the proof of identity of the Wang family. The Wang family was extremely large, and its members were scattered all over the Palace of Light. Even in a remote place like the late autumn snowfield, there were remote branches of the Wang family. Fortunately, I took Wang Jiuyang's storage device, Suyu said to himself. He took the identity token and went to register. At the same time, more and more martial artists gathered outside the heavenly palace. As far as the eye could see, tens of thousands of li were filled with people. They all looked at the second floor of the heavenly palace with envy. There were only exquisite railings on all 4 sides of the second floor, and the situation on the second floor could be seen clearly. In the building, 7 outstanding young men in extraordinary clothes were sitting quietly, talking and laughing. Among them, Xianhua was the leader. She sat on the highest seat, with a faint smile on her face, looking around at the hundreds of millions of martial artists who were looking up at her. She enjoyed being the center of attention, as if she were the sun in the sky, unique. All the outstanding talents of the world are here, Xianhua said with a faint smile. The other 6 young men smiled. On Xianhua's right was a handsome man. He waved the folding fan in his hand and said with a faint smile, To be precise, everyone below the emissary of light is an ant. The few young men smiled without saying anything, but there was more or less a hint of arrogance on their faces. That was true. Every time there was a competition, it could be said that it was the provincial capital of all the geniuses in the Palace of Light. But only the emissaries of light were truly qualified to compete and climb to the second floor of the heavenly palace. The competition was actually just a stage for the emissaries of light to show off their abilities. Throughout the years, martial artists who were not emissaries of light were rarely able to climb to the second floor of the heavenly palace. Xian Hua raised her glass to the crowd. This is a grand event for us, the emissaries of light. Let us show the world. Thud, thud, thud. However, just as they were raising their glasses and drinking, the sound of footsteps came from the entrance. The crowd looked in the direction of the sound and saw a silver-haired martial artist wearing a golden mask walking up. He glanced at the crowd calmly and sat at the last seat as if there was no one else around, waiting for the competition to begin without saying a word. The 7 emissaries of light were stunned. How could someone other than the emissaries of light be able to climb to the second floor of the heavenly palace? It shouldn't be. However, the entrance of the first floor was guarded by several powerful path masters. Only those who had passed through their strict strength assessment were qualified to enter the second floor. They let this person up, which was enough to prove that he was qualified to climb to the second floor. A hint of surprise flashed in Xianhua's eyes. Apart from the emissaries of light, there was also a peerless genius whose strength reached the level of a path master within 200 years. Normally, the geniuses within the territory of the Palace of Light would go through layers of selection. After a great wave of elimination, the truly powerful ones would have already been selected. How could there be someone missing? "Who are you?" Xianhua asked. Su Yu looked straight ahead and said calmly, "I'm just a nobody." Speaking too much was bound to make mistakes. Moreover, he was a wanted man, so it was not appropriate for him to speak too much to avoid exposing himself. However, the competition had always been dominated by the emissaries of light. Su Yu's unexpected participation had already caused them to feel enmity towards him. Now, Su Yu's unwillingness to converse with them naturally caused them to feel even more enmity. What attitude? "Xianhua, the emissary of light, is asking you a question." The man with delicate features stared at Su Yu with dissatisfaction. Su Yu looked up at him and said, "She asked, and I answered. Is there anything wrong with that?" The man with delicate features was the 6th-ranked emissary of light, the Starfall emissary. Hearing Su Yu's quibbling, he was very displeased. "Do you know who we are sitting in front of you? Do you know who we are?" Su Yu said briefly, "Emissaries of light." "It's good that you know." "So?" Su Yu calmly countered with a question. The Starfall emissary choked. So he should know how to speak to them. Who were the emissaries of light? Normally, they were great figures who were rarely seen. Ordinary martial artists would feel honored to see them. As the 2nd-ranked emissary of light, Xianhua, it would be a great honor for Su Yu to be questioned by her personally. Ordinary people could not even dream of it. In the end, Su Yu actually had a cold and indifferent attitude. Furthermore, his words showed that he did not respect the emissaries of light. The Starfall emissary stared at Su Yu, crossing her arms in front of her chest. "Do you know that normally you do not even have the right to speak to us?" She was not lying. With the status of the emissaries of light, ordinary people could not speak to them. Su Yu's eyes were calm. "If I am not mistaken, you are the ones who are speaking to me." He had not taken the initiative to speak to them. You, refusing a toast only to drink a forfeit. The Starfall emissary's eyes flashed with anger. He was about to explode when Xianhua said calmly, "Forget it. The competition is a gathering of the Palace of Light. Everyone should participate peacefully. There is no need to make enemies." As she spoke, she smiled at Su Yu. "I welcome you on behalf of the emissaries of light." Su Yu merely nodded his head slightly, then slowly closed his eyes and did not speak a single word. The Starfall emissary was infuriated. Who did he think he was to put on airs in front of the emissaries of light? Of course, since Xianhua had already spoken, he would not make things difficult for Su Yu. He sneered. "Later, let me have a taste of your abilities. Let's see if your abilities match up to your arrogance." Su Yu's brows creased slightly. When had he ever been arrogant? He had simply not lowered his head to the emissaries of light as they had expected, to satisfy their desire to look down on all living beings. They were the ones who were arrogant, not Su Yu. Dong! A moment later, the crisp sound of a gong traveled into the heavenly palace of the martial paths. The martial artists watching the battle below were visibly stirred. Xian Hua slowly stood up. There are still 2 hours before the competition begins. According to tradition, we will exchange martial arts skills. Su Yu knew this. Before the official competition, they needed to exchange pointers with each other to roughly determine the abilities of each participant. This exchange would serve as a reference for the final ranking. If Su Yu wanted to get second place, it would be best if he revealed some of his abilities during the exchange. Otherwise, it would affect the final result. He looked at the Starfall emissary. Didn't this person want to test his abilities? Then he would grant his wish. Sensing Su Yu's stealthy gaze, the Starfall emissary laughed. The competition between the emissaries of light is not over yet. Do you think it's your turn to fight? Take a good look at who the emissaries of light is and prepare yourself. At the end of his sentence, the corners of his mouth curled into a sinister smile. Su Yu shrugged. He was happy to see this. He could observe the abilities of the emissaries of light from the sidelines. Xian Hua presided over the exchange. First match, Yang Hua versus Starfall. Yang Hua was the 7th-ranked emissary of light, but his abilities were at the level of a path master. Starfall confidently walked to the center and smiled. Come, let me see how much you've improved after 10 years of training. 10 years ago, when they were competing for the ranking of the emissaries of light, Yang Hua had been ranked 7th after losing by a single move. Chapter 2294. For the past 10 years, he had been desperately cultivating and keeping a low profile while concealing his true strength. The battle this time would probably give Starfall a huge shock. Starfall envoy, be careful. Yang Hua took out 2 rings, 1 gold and 1 silver, and imbued them with a large amount of Tao Lord's power. Immediately, the 2 rings revolved rapidly around him. These were Tao tools that he had painstakingly refined for the past 10 years. The spectators' expressions suddenly changed. He actually condensed a Tao tool. Condensing a Tao tool required great perseverance and luck. Many Tao lords who had become Tao lords for tens of millions of years had not successfully condensed a Tao tool. Either they did not have the conditions, or they were unlucky. Starfall had only been a Tao lord for about 10 years, yet he was already able to condense his own Tao tool. This was truly rare. Go. Yang Hua raised a finger, and the 2 rings, 1 gold and 1 silver, each shot out an incomparably thick beam of light, instantly attacking Starfall. Such might could be considered to be rather good amongst ordinary Tao lords. If it was 10 years ago, this attack would have been enough to make it into the top 5. However, Starfall did not panic or feel fear like Yang Hua had imagined. Instead, he revealed a faint sneer. He reached to his waist and took out a purple vertical flute. The vertical flute glowed with a fluorescent light. It was obviously a Tao tool. Starfall actually condensed a Tao tool. The radiant envoys were shocked again. As he played, the flute produced extremely difficult notes that caused headaches and discomfort to those who heard it. Just as the 2 beams of light were about to hit Starfall, they strangely changed directions and attacked Yang Hua himself. Yang Hua was caught off guard and hurriedly put up a defense. However, he was still caught off guard and was sent flying by his own Tao tool. Halfway through his flight, before he could stabilize himself, a powerful domain enveloped him. Within the domain, he was attacked a second time. His body shook violently, and he spat out a large mouthful of blood before falling to the ground. His face was pale and weak. Swoosh! Starfall elegantly put the vertical flute back into its sheath and had a mocking look on his face. Yang Hua, you have regressed in the past 10 years. Back then, you could still block 10 of my attacks. Why can't you even block one now? TSK, SK. The radiant envoys pondered. It was not that Yang Hua's strength had regressed. Compared to 10 years ago, his strength had increased by leaps and bounds. The reason why he had lost so miserably was because Starfall's strength had greatly increased. With his strength, he might be able to challenge the 5th-ranked Wang Jiang. The light envoys, who were ranked at the bottom, looked at Wang Jiang with fear and admiration. Xian Hua sat firmly on the main seat and commented with a smile. Yang Hua's will is firm, and it's worth congratulating him for condensing a Taoist artifact. The flaw is that the Taoist artifact doesn't have enough spirituality, which is why it can be controlled by others and backfired on itself. Overall, it's not bad. The dispirited Yang Hua looked much better now. Xian Hua was a person who rarely praised others. Receiving a not bad from her meant that his 10 years of hard work had not gone to waste. Starfall also looked at Xian Hua expectantly, hoping to get her comment. Not only is Starfall's willpower astonishing, but he also diverted his attention to temper his domain. His cultivation hasn't fallen behind either. It's really rare. Not bad. A smile appeared on Starfall's face. Not bad. Such an evaluation, coming from Xian Hua, was something to be proud of. After all, it was a comment from the second emissary of light, which was extremely rare. Like a queen, Xian Hua looked down at the rest of the envoys. Second match, Qing Ling against Huang Yang. One of them was ranked 9th, while the other was ranked 10th. The two of them were Dao lords, but they hadn't condensed a Dao artifact yet. They fought with their domains. After more than 100 rounds, the victor was barely decided. Xian Hua's expression was calm. She commented, "In the past 10 years, the two of you only managed to stabilize your cultivation. You haven't made any further progress. It's really disappointing. Every step in the Dao Lord realm was arduous. How difficult was it to make any breakthroughs? Stabilizing one's foundation in 10 years was already the result of one's hard work. If it were any other new Dao Lord, stabilizing one's foundation in 10 years would make them overjoyed. However, they were emissaries of light. This little achievement was not worthy of their identity and status. Next match, Kong Chu against Zhang Yuan. The other emissaries were instantly excited. Zhang Yuan was ranked 8th among the emissaries of light, but Kong Chu was ranked 3rd. His strength was second only to Xian Hua. His performance was very anticipated. The two of them stood in the middle of the arena. Zhang Yuan had a bitter expression as he bowed to Kong Chu. "Emissary Kong Chu, please show mercy." "I'll let you have one move," Kong Chu said. In a battle between Dao lords, one move was often enough to determine the victor. However, no one thought that Kong Chu was being conceited by letting Zhang Yuan have one move. This was because, given the difference in strength, Zhang Yuan might not have a chance of victory even if Kong Chu let him have 10 moves. "Thank you." Zhang Yuan took a deep breath and attacked with all his might. Zhang Yuan did not condense his own Dao artifact to fight with his full-screen domain. His domain was a lightning domain. Once it was released, it immediately released boundless terrifying lightning at Kong Chu. The continuous flashes of lightning and the undulating sounds of thunder created a rather mighty scene, causing the envoys to nod their heads in approval. The reason why Zheng Yuan was ranked 8th was largely because of his domain, which was stronger than others' domains. However, to everyone's astonishment, Kong Chu did not even use a defensive barrier as he stood amidst the lightning. He allowed the lightning to strike him, but it did not harm his Dao body at all. As expected of Kong Chu, amidst their astonishment, everyone could only sigh and cast pitiful gazes at Zheng Yuan. The greatest tragedy in sparring was not losing, but being unable to move the other party, even if they wanted to. Zhang Yuan smiled bitterly as he slowly retracted his domain. "I've lost." Kong Chu nodded indifferently and said, "Continue working hard." With that said, he silently returned to his seat. Just like that, the sparring ended silently. Kong Chu didn't even make a single move, but he had already won, subduing the enemy without a fight. "Not bad," said Xianhua nonchalantly. There was a hint of contempt in her tone. The layman enjoyed the show, while the expert appreciated the artistry. Others might think that Kong Chu was impressive for taking Zhang Yuan's domain head-on without any defense, but from Xianhua's point of view, it was only because Kong Chu had prepared a defensive Dao artifact in advance. Otherwise, how could he be unscathed after taking Zhang Yuan's domain without any defense? Kong Chu had deliberately let him have one move because he was deliberately holding back his strength, unwilling to be seen by her. Kong Chu looked at Xianhua with a hint of challenge in her eyes. She had been suppressed by Xianhua and had long wanted to challenge him again. She could not miss out on this competition. She said, "Emissary Xianhua, why don't we spar?" The eyes of many emissaries lit up. A battle between the second and third ranked emissaries was a rare major event. Everyone looked at Xianhua in anticipation, eager to witness the battle between the two top emissaries. However, Xianhua smiled faintly and shook her head. "There's no need." "Are you afraid of losing?" Kong Chu's expression turned stiff. Xianhua's eyes were filled with condescension as she said, "No, I'm afraid that you can't afford to lose." Kong Chu said in a self-deprecating manner, "Emissary Xianhua, I'm a person who can't afford to lose. If I lose to you within 100 moves, I won't refuse to admit defeat." Xianhua said indifferently, "You've misunderstood me. I'm not saying that you're unwilling to admit defeat." "Then what do you mean?" Kong Chu frowned. Xianhua did not say a word. She gently tapped the sky above her head with her slender finger. Instantly, the clear sky suddenly became covered in dark clouds. Thunder rumbled, and dark red flames spread in the clouds. A destructive aura of a great calamity suppressed all living beings to the point of trembling. As emissaries of light, their bodies trembled. They actually felt a majestic aura. Kong Chu revealed a shocked expression, creating a heavenly tribulation with one finger. Your painting Dao has already reached such a level?" Xianhua slowly retracted her finger. The great calamity of heaven and earth quickly retreated, and the clear sky returned. Apart from the remaining pressure, there was nothing left. It was as if nothing had happened just now. "Do you understand what I mean?" Xianhua said indifferently. Kong Chu's body stiffened on the spot for a long time. A bitter smile flashed across his lips. He bowed deeply to Xianhua. "I've lost." He understood what Xianhua meant. She was not worried that he would not admit defeat. Instead, she was worried that after Kong Chu lost, he would be unable to recover due to the great disparity in strength between the two of them. Everyone stared at Xianhua, and the anticipation in their eyes reached an unprecedented level. This was the strength of the second-ranked emissary of light. They could only look up to him. The sparring between the emissaries of light ended here. Xianhua said, "Now we can make the rankings. I will be first, Kong Chu will be second, Starfall will be third, Yanghua will be fourth, Huangyang will be seventh." Finally, her gaze swept toward Siyu. "You will be eighth," she said calmly. The crowd below the stage cheered enthusiastically. This trip was not in vain. I got to see the sparring between the emissaries of light. Indeed, as expected of the emissaries of light, their talents and abilities are frighteningly strong. With them, the Palace of Light will continue to prosper in the future. Hearing the cheers of the crowd, Xianhua smiled indifferently. "Since the rankings have been decided, let's head to the hunting ground and prepare. Wait." A voice interrupted Xianhua's announcement. Xianhua's gaze shifted to the person who had spoken. Any objections? The person who had interrupted her was naturally Suyu. He said seriously, "May I ask, what is the basis for my ranking as the 8th? He had not even fought, and he had already been ranked last. Suyu was not a vain person. If it had been any other occasion, he would not have cared about his ranking. But now, the ranking of this sparring match would affect the entire ranking of the Zulu divine deer. It would directly affect whether he could get the antler of the divine deer of light. Xianhua calmly said, "Don't you think that I have placed you last for your own good?" As she spoke, she glanced at Xingyun. Xingyun's enmity towards Suyu was written all over her face. If she allowed Suyu to spar with her, her fate would be extremely miserable. Kong Chu also looked at Suyu and lightly shouted, "Human, don't be so ungrateful. Xian, Hua's good intentions are yours." Chapter 2295. Starfall revealed a dissatisfied expression and said, "Envoy Xianhua is truly too benevolent. You actually treat someone who disrespected you so kindly." "That's right, Xianhua emissary. Not everyone is worthy of sympathy. A person with mediocre abilities and arrogance, like him, should actually be taught a lesson. A person like him will easily provoke some vicious and merciless people in the future, and they will kill him. Instead of that, why don't we teach him a lesson and let him know the immensity of heaven and earth, so that he wouldn't dare act rashly again?" "That's right. Not only are we educating him on the principles of life, but we're also saving his life. Xianhua envoy, don't harm him because of a moment of soft-heartedness." The group of envoys of light were trying to persuade Suyu in a dignified manner. It was obvious that they wanted to take revenge on Suyu, but they made themselves sound so noble, and were only short of becoming Suyu's second parents. Xian, Hua's brows furrowed slightly as she stared at them. "Are you denying my decision?" Under her gaze, everyone immediately shut their mouths guiltily. No one persisted. Thus, Xianhua made the final decision and said, "Since that's the case, then we'll use the rankings from before. Wait." Suyu interrupted her once again with a displeased look on his face. "Do you light envoys always like to talk to yourselves like this?" Xianhua turned a deaf ear to Suyu's objection to the ranking. Instead, she was immersed in her own benevolent imagination. "You." Xianhua was baffled. She had clearly helped Suyu, so why didn't he appreciate her kindness? "Xianhua envoy, look, what's the point of helping this kind of arrogant trash? No, this kind of person will be slapped to death sooner or later. Xianhua envoy, let me spar with him. I need to let him know what it means to stop before going too far." Suyu raised his eyebrows as he listened. What did he say to make the envoys of light so angry? He just wanted to participate in the spar. How did he become a sinner? "All of you, shut up." Suyu took a deep breath and shouted. His voice naturally carried a dragon's might. After he spoke, it instantly drowned out the voices of the radiant envoys. Even the noise from the countless spectators below the stage was suppressed. The whole place was filled with Suyu's voice, which reverberated over and over again, and all other sounds were obliterated. When his voice dissipated, the entire place was silent. Suyu stood up and walked to the center of the arena. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back as he looked at the few envoys of light. "Do you want to come together or one by one?" What? He wants to challenge everyone, and he even said that he wanted them to come at him together? This is simply too arrogant to the point of no bounds. Putting aside the feelings of the martial artists below the stage, the several light envoys on the stage were so angry that they laughed. A nameless junior dared to look down on the emissary of light in front of all the powerful martial artists in the world. Huangyang, who was ranked last, snorted angrily. "Ignorant and fearless thing! You don't even know that we're saving you." He had already said the same thing twice. However, this time he didn't finish his words because Suyu's gaze was like lightning and he was staring at him. Two incomparably intense golden pillars of light shot out from his eyes. This was an additional talent that came with the great increase in the dragon blood in his body. He could use his eyes to stimulate the power of the dragon, and its power was not bad. He could kill or heavily injure any Dao Lord below the family head level with a single strike. Huangyang hadn't even finished speaking when he was struck by the golden pillar of light. Having suffered such a heavy blow, Huang Yang spat out a large mouthful of blood and was sent flying from the second level of the heavenly palace of martial paths to the first floor. With a dull thud, Huang Yang lay on the ground, his face covered in blood, his body twitching. He was seriously injured. At that moment, the boiling crowd slowly quieted down and finally fell into an eerie silence. Seriously injuring the last-ranked light envoys with just one gaze? Swish, swish, swish. Suyu instantly became the center of attention. If you want to fight, let's fight. So long-winded. Suyu couldn't hold back his temper and directly attacked to shut him up. Looking at the remaining light envoys, Suyu calmly said, "Do you want to come at me together or alone?" Finally, the light envoys came to their senses, shocked and angry. Zhang Yuan took a step forward, reprimanding, "What's the use of sneak attacks? Don't think that you can step on us light envoys just like that." Another guy talking to himself. When had Suyu ever taken the initiative to provoke them? They had always been the ones targeting Suyu. Scram! Suyu couldn't be bothered to waste his breath. His eyes once again shot out two golden beams of light. Zhang Yuan was furious at being interrupted, but having learned his lesson from Huang Yang's mistake, he immediately activated his Thunderbolt domain and shouted, "Petty tricks! I'll let you see the true power of the light envoys." Puff! However, the golden beam of light pierced through the Thunderbolt domain as if it were paper. It struck Zhang Yuan's body without any hindrance. Like Huang Yang, he spat out blood on the spot and flew out of the second level of the heavenly palace. Amidst the uproar below the stage, he crashed onto the ground and fainted on the spot. If Huang Yang, who was ranked last, had lost because of carelessness, Zhang Yuan, who was ranked 8th, was defeated in the same manner. That was alarming enough. Sure enough, Qingling, who was ranked 9th, had originally been filled with anger. At that moment, when Suyu's gaze swept over, she averted her gaze, not even daring to look him in the eye. She was afraid that Suyu would attack her next. The light envoy's aura had weakened considerably after Suyu defeated one person in a row. However, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, they had no choice but to retreat. "Let me spar with you." Yang Hua stepped forward from the crowd. As ranked 7th, he was only slightly stronger than Zhang Yuan. He had no confidence in defeating Suyu. Taking out his gold and silver ringed doctrine artifact, Yang Hua attacked without a word. Suyu stood where he was, shooting out two more golden beams of light. Compared to the previous two, they were much weaker. Even so, they still managed to disperse the beam of light shot out from Yang Hua's doctrine artifact. The remnants of the golden beam of light sent the doctrine artifact flying and smashed into Yang Hua's body, sending him stumbling backward and almost falling out of the heavenly palace of the martial paths. Yang Hua was bewildered. Why was the golden beam of light so much weaker this time? Was it because he lacked stamina or... You should thank yourself for not being long-winded. Suyu gave him the answer he wanted. Stand down. Yang Hua bit his lip. How could he be willing to admit defeat? However, the outcome of a spar was never decided by whether one was willing or not. He was not strong enough, so he could only admit defeat. I've lost. Yang Hua silently retreated. Suyu had defeated 3 people in a single blow. The crowd was in an uproar. Who is he? Where is he from? Why is there such a powerful young heaven ruler in the Light Palace that has yet to be discovered? His strength is too terrifying. Chapter 2296. The first 2 times he had said the same thing, it had felt like arrogance. However, at this moment, from Suyu's words, millions of people could feel a sense of domineering arrogance, as well as a sense of calmness, as if he was looking down on the world from the clouds. He did not need Xianhua's help, nor did he need the light envoys to teach him how to be a person. He did not need their so-called help. Xianhua's expression was calm, and she did not panic. She calmly said, Starfall you go. They could not attack together. the honor of the light envoys, forced them to fight one-on-one. If they really attacked as a group, even if they won, they would still lose. Not only did Starfall not move forward, but he subconsciously shrank back. He said in a low voice, "Envoy Xianhua, this person is purposely causing trouble. Why should we be polite to him? Let's punish this person together to restore the honor of the light envoys." Previously, he had said that Su Yu was arrogant and that he would personally teach him a lesson. Now that it was his turn to fight, he had tried to drag Xianhua along with him. He was not afraid of losing. On the contrary, he felt that he could defeat Su Yu, but it would be a narrow victory. In the end, he might end up in a sorry state. In front of everyone, he had to be so pathetic to defeat someone he looked down on. He could not afford to lose face like this. "I do not wish to repeat myself," Xianhua calmly said, her voice a little colder. Kong Chu also glared at Starfall. "As the light envoys, how can you be afraid?" Starfall was immediately displeased by these words. Why did it sound like he was afraid to fight? He just did not want to win with too much difficulty. Since the two top-ranked light envoys had said so, Starfall could only grit his teeth and step forward. Traces of hostility appeared on his face, and he stared at Su Yu coldly. "That's fine," he said. "It will only be interesting if you have some abilities. Prepare yourself. Next, you might taste the feeling of being defeated by the envoy of light." Su Yu was rather disgusted by this person. Among the light envoys, Starfall had the strongest sense of superiority besides Wang Zhiyang. The former was ranked 5th, while the latter was ranked 6th. The more mediocre a person was, the more they liked to use their status to fill their vanity. On the contrary, Xianhua, Kong Chu, and Xianin, who were ranked higher, were more reserved. Just like the saying of ancients, a full bucket of water makes no sound, but a half bucket of water makes a tinkling sound. "You are really talkative," Su Yu said calmly, while he shot out 2 golden light beams. Starfall was extremely displeased that he attacked without any hesitation. She roared, "Enough is enough!" It was this beam of light that defeated 3 people in a row. He definitely didn't want to be the 4th person. Shwa! He immediately drew out the long whistle from his waist and blew it on the spot. Ear-piercing notes rang out continuously. When the golden light beam was about to reach him, it strangely twisted its direction and turned toward Su Yu. "Pa!" The golden light beam immediately bombarded Su Yu. Starfall's face lit up with joy. She put down the whistle and lectured him with the tone of a senior. "I told you, you need to know how high the sky is and how deep the earth is. Otherwise, you'll end up very—" He couldn't finish his words, as the 2 golden light beams didn't even leave a scratch on Su Yu's body. Just a layer of dragon scales appeared on the surface of his body, and the 2 golden beams of light collapsed. Wasn't this scene similar to when Zhang Yuan attacked Kong Chu? Without putting up any defense, he took the opponent's attack head-on. It was the same for Su Yu. Hua's eyes glowed as she sized up Su Yu's clothes. She was trying to see if Su Yu was wearing a defensive-type Dao artifact, like Kong Chu. The crowd below the stage was in an uproar. They were once again shocked by Su Yu's powerful physique. Starfall's words came to an abrupt halt, and her expression immediately turned solemn. Su Yu was more difficult to deal with than he had imagined, but he didn't think he would lose. "Humph, this is only the beginning. Don't be too pleased." Starfall raised the whistle again, blowing it slowly. When had Su Yu ever been pleased? He should be the one feeling pleased. He had thought that he had dealt a heavy blow to Su Yu, but he hadn't. The low and difficult sound of the flute rang out once again. This time, it was controlling Su Yu's body. His body seemed to be on the verge of losing control, especially his right hand, which had lifted up on its own to slap his own face. The Dao artifact could not only control the Dao artifact, but it could also control the opponent's body. Starfall sneered. After he had cultivated the Dao artifact, he had sparred with a few family masters. Even people as strong as them found the Tao artifact troublesome. Su Yu was no exception. He laughed coldly, controlling Su Yu's palm to slap his own face. There should be nothing more embarrassing than slapping his own face, right? But just as Su Yu's palm was about to slap his own face, Su Yu's palm suddenly stopped, not continuing. What was going on? Starfall sped up the whistle, but Su Yu's palm did not lose control. Instead, he put it down. Looking at Su Yu's face, a hint of mockery flashed past. Seeing that you were playing the flute with all your might, I reluctantly played along. His body was flowing with dragon blood, emitting a shocking pressure. Any external force that entered his body would be dispersed by the dragon energy. How could the notes played by Starfall control him? He was just putting on a show for Starfall to entertain him. How could this be? Starfall did not believe that his Tao artifact could not deal with Su Yu. He played the flute even harder, creating an even more ear-piercing and unpleasant note. Even the light envoys watching the battle could not help but cover their ears. But he still showed no signs of controlling Su Yu. He merely frowned. It's a little noisy. He slowly opened his mouth and took a deep breath. With this breath, all the atmosphere within a 10,000-mile radius was sucked away by Su Yu. The huge change caused the clouds in the sky to change. Many mortals were temporarily suffocated, clutching their throats in pain. Only when the atmosphere in the distance filled up the vacuum did they regain their composure. Looking at Su Yu, his skinny body was like a balloon that had been inflated. His entire body had swelled up to 3 times its original size. Xian, Hua's pupils shrank. Activate the defensive barrier. She took the lead and drew an umbrella above her head. A large expanse of golden light fell from the edge of the umbrella and protected her within. The rest of the people activated their defensive barriers, one after the other, retreating. Starfall also felt a great threat. His eyelids twitched, and the notes he played became even more chaotic and ear-piercing. Roar! At that moment, Su Yu suddenly opened his mouth, exhaling the air he had sucked in. A mighty dragon's roar roared out. The endless pressure contained in the dragon's roar swept out in all directions. The crowd watching the battle below the stage fell to the ground like chives. The impact spread over thousands of miles, triggering a series of wails and cries. If this was the case in the distance, the entire heavenly palace of the martial path was shaking. The immense destructive power of the dragon's roar shattered many of the decorations in the heavenly palace of the martial path. Even several beams fell. Fortunately, the heavenly palace was maintained by an extraordinary and powerful seal. Otherwise, it would have collapsed from the roar. Looking at Starfall, who was closer, his robe had been shredded like strips of cloth. The long whistle in his hand had been shaken away by the dragon's roar. He stood on the spot like a log, his ears, eyes, nose, and mouth covered in blood. Even his whole body was blood-red. Upon closer inspection, one would find that the blood of the Pathmaster was overflowing from his pores. Facing the dragon's roar head-on, he looked fine on the surface, but his insides had been shattered into pieces. A gust of wind blew past. Starfall's eyes were wide open, and he fell to the ground with a thud. He breathed in less and exhaled more. He was on the verge of death. Hiss! The crowd below the stage stood up, their faces full of horror. With just one roar, he had almost killed the 6th-ranked emissary of light. This was the upper-class sound wave technique. Compared to this, Starfall's manipulation of Tao artifacts was just a minor skill. The dragon's roar was also an additional talent that Su Yu had obtained after the dragon blood in his body soared. Not only did it contain a sound wave attack, but it also contained the coercion of a dragon. Su Yu looked indifferent. I hope my attack this time will make you understand the immensity of heaven and earth. I also hope that from now on you will be more restrained, lest you die one day without knowing how you died. Su Yu repeated what Starfall had said to him. The emissary of light, who had been defeated by Su Yu, felt ashamed and wanted to find a hole to hide in. It was not Su Yu who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth, But they had said they wanted to teach Su Yu how to behave. Now that they thought about their own faces, they were the ones who were truly arrogant. After defeating 4 people in a row, Su Yu's momentum was like the sun in the sky. Countless people were secretly guessing his identity. The heavenly rulers of the Light Palace had gone through many selections. How could they have missed such an earth-shattering person? Su Yu's eyes were calm as he looked at Xianhua and Kong Chu. I don't mind if the 2 of you join forces. Finally, the crowd erupted. This was the pinnacle battle of this year's martial arts competition. A nameless heavenly ruler was challenging the top 2 emissaries of the Light Palace. Xianhua looked straight into Su Yu's eyes. Don't push yourself too hard. Don't overdo it. Su Yu had already defeated 4 people in a row, negatively affecting the emissary's supreme honor. If even Kong Chu was defeated by him, it would inevitably raise doubts about the abilities of this year's emissary of light. Su Yu laughed. What do you mean by don't overdo it? Do you mean that in a fair duel, only the emissaries of light are allowed to defeat others, but others are not allowed to defeat you? Xianhua didn't speak, but just looked at Su Yu calmly. The faint smile on her face disappeared. Let me do it! Kong Chu stepped forward, his face filled with fighting spirit. I, the emissary of light, am a person who can afford to lose. Previously, in order to challenge Xianhua, he had concealed his abilities. However, after Xianhua displayed that finger, he knew that his abilities were insufficient. Hence, there was no need for him to conceal his abilities. All right. So you said, since you are quite straightforward, I will let you have one move first. Among the emissaries of light present, there were only 2 people who did not mock him. One was Xianhua, and the other was him. Hence, Su Yu was especially merciful. He had decided to let Kong Chu have one move first. Otherwise, once he attacked, Kong Chu would not even have the chance to retaliate. What? Chapter 2297. Isn't he too arrogant? How dare he allow Kong Chu to strike first? Kong Chu dared to allow Zhang Yuan a strike because of the disparity in strength, so it's fine for him to allow Zhang Yuan a strike. However, Kong Chu is ranked 3rd among the radiant emissaries. Even Xianhua might not dare act so arrogantly. I don't believe that he would dare to take Kong Chu's strike without retaliating. It's impossible. Kong Chu's expression changed, and he furrowed his brows. Aren't you too confident in your abilities? The abilities of the top 3 light envoys are vastly different from the ones ranked behind them. He felt like he was being looked down upon. Su Yu had probably gotten carried away by Su Yu's 4 consecutive victories. Su Yu smiled calmly. There's no point in talking any further. Let's fight. Kong Chu had already lost his temper. He thought that he had already done all he could. And since Su Yu insisted on this, why should he hold back? Then be careful. Kong Chu took a deep breath and released a terrifying aura of a family master. Upon seeing this, exclamations came from below the stage. Ah, family master level. Kong Chu has actually broken through to such a level. 10 years ago, he was still an ordinary path master. Only a few years have passed since then. Oh my God! Kong Chu really hid his abilities well. However, this will stop that human lad. Ha ha ha! He probably didn't expect that Kong Chu was an expert at the level of a family master. Yet he still allowed him to strike first. Ha ha! I'm dying of laughter. Compared to the mockery of the spectators, Kong Chu was quite calm. He looked straight into Su Yu's eyes and said, It's not too late for you to back out now. Su Yu said calmly, I will keep my word. Attack! Kong Chu shook his head inwardly. He felt that Su Yu was just suffering because he wanted to save face. After revealing his true cultivation, Su Yu still dared to act so arrogantly. He was probably too embarrassed to take back his words. What a pity! Kong Chu sighed, then attacked without any hesitation. Not only did he take out a doctrine artifact, but he also released his own domain. Coupled with the power of a Path Master, his attack was enough to crush any ordinary Path Master. Seeing that Su Yu was engulfed by the Doctrine artifact and the domain, many people's eyes were filled with mockery. It was as if they could already see him begging for mercy. The Light Envoy's dignity was inviolable. Even Kong Chu himself showed a regretful expression. Unfortunately, if he had the battle record of 4 consecutive victories, he would definitely soar into the sky, and his name would resound throughout the Palace of Light. Not only did he challenge him, he was so arrogant that he gave him a handicap. As a result, he suffered a crushing defeat and became the laughingstock of the world. Sigh. What's the point? Kong Chu sighed. However, in the next moment, his pupils constricted. Su Yu had indeed been hit by the attack of the Tao artifact and the realm, but he hadn't been killed as expected. In fact, there were no injuries at all. What shocked Kong Chu the most was that Su Yu didn't even use the simplest defensive barrier, and he just allowed his attacks to land on his body. The surface of his body was shrouded in thick blood energy. This was a natural reaction of his body after being attacked. The blood qi condensed together to form a crouching crimson dragon. His all-out attack couldn't penetrate the blood-red dragon at all. The hundreds of millions of martial artists who were waiting to see Su Yu's end were completely shocked. No, it can't be. He actually took Kong Chu's attack head-on. What's important isn't whether he can receive it or not. It's that he doesn't even have any defense. He's relying on his body to receive it. Who is he? Kong Chu watched in shock for a long time. His heart was filled with many complicated emotions. Shock, disbelief, unwillingness, and disappointment. It was only when Su Yu's blood energy shook and forced Kong Chu's Tao artifact and realm away, and he was about to attack, that Kong Chu came back to his senses. His face was filled with bitterness as he bowed deeply to Su Yu. Your abilities are at the peak of perfection. Kong Chu admits defeat. His admission of defeat caused the originally silent arena to fall into an instant of deathly silence. No one felt that Kong Chu's admission of defeat was too abrupt. After all, was there still a need to exchange pointers with someone who stood there motionlessly and didn't move at all? The two of them weren't even on the same level. Everyone finally looked at Xianhua. With Su Yu's abilities, he would undoubtedly continue to challenge Xianhua. Were they, the emissaries of light, really going to be defeated one by a nameless person? If news of this spread, the nearby Nightless Empire would surely mock the light envoys for being in name, but not in reality. This martial arts competition would be a dark day for the light envoys and the light palace. Just as everyone was feeling extremely gloomy, Su Yu suddenly said, "Forget it. Let's end the exchange here." For some unknown reason, everyone felt relieved and heaved a long sigh of relief. It was as if they felt that if they continued, Xianhua would be defeated. Let me rearrange the rankings. Xianhua is first, I'm second, you're third, you're fourth, you're fifth. Su Yu was like a champion, rearranging the rankings in front of everyone, because he had never paid attention to their names. Apart from Xianhua, he used Yu to replace them. It sounded like he was being extremely disrespectful. However, no one thought so anymore, because Su Yu had absolute abilities that allowed him to disregard their names. If you have any objections, you can step forward. Su Yu looked around at the light envoys. Apart from Xianhua, everyone else who he looked at had to lower their heads, unable to look him in the eye. Xianhua's red lips parted slightly. Actually, you can continue to challenge. There was a hint of anger in her words. He had defeated 5 light envoys in a row, and even the third place was not spared. This was an unprecedented blow to the reputation of the light envoys. She had already warned Su Yu to stop before going too far, but he still went his own way, insisting on defeating Kong Chu as well. It was not a big deal for the first 4 to be defeated, as their rankings were quite low. However, Kong Chu was different. Even he, who was in third place, had been defeated. How would outsiders view the light envoys? They would probably think that they did not live up to their names. Su Yu could hear the hidden anger in her words. He calmly said no need. I'm tired. I'll rest for a while. Tired? From the beginning to the end, Su Yu had never used any of his primordial power. What was most undeniable was that Su Yu had been standing in the same spot since the start of the challenge, not moving a single step. Today's battle had made Su Yu famous in the Light Palace. Xian Hua's crystal eyes were solemn. Tell me your name. The hundreds of millions of martial artists were also shocked, staring at Su Yu. They were too curious about where such a peerless genius had come from in the Light Palace. They had not suspected that Su Yu was someone from the outside world, because those who could participate in the martial arts championship had to go through identity checks. Only people from the Light Palace could pass. However, Xianhua's tone was a problem. Rather than a question, it was more of an order. Su Yu calmly said, "We'll talk after you defeat me." The so-called victory was naturally not the sparring, but the overall ranking in the martial arts championship. I'm not interested in the name of someone who has lost to me, and I don't want to know, Xianhua retorted. Su Yu shrugged. It's not too late to talk about that after you win. Xianhua and Su Yu looked at each other. Their gazes seemed to collide violently in the air. Let's go to the hunting ground. Xianhua slammed the table and flew off. The rest of the light envoys followed. Su Yu walked at the back of the pack, his mind replaying the rules of the martial arts championship. There were many wild creatures in the hunting ground. Among them, there were wild beasts that had yet to develop spiritual intelligence, as well as criminals imprisoned by the Light Palace. The points awarded for hunting them varied according to their abilities. Among the prey, the one with the highest points was undoubtedly the light divine deer. It alone was worth 1,000 points. Among the rest, Xia Yan's level was worth 500 points. However, there was only one such prey in the entire hunting ground. There were 10 family master level prey, each worth 100 points. There were 100 ordinary path master level prey, each worth 20 points. They were scattered in every corner of the hunting ground. How to find and kill them depended on their own abilities. A moment later, the fog forest, surrounded by layers of seals, appeared in front of them. Su Yu tried to use his transparent eye, but the layer of fog was extremely isolating and he could not see too far. At most, he could only see 10 miles away. Congratulations on participating in the martial arts championship. A group of beauties in palace attire had already been waiting at the entrance of the seal. In the middle of them was a beautiful woman in a black palace dress. She had beautiful eyes and was extremely beautiful. However, her aura was extremely frightening, almost on par with Xia Yan's. Greetings, Deputy Palace Master Lu. Xianhua and the others stepped forward respectfully. Deputy Palace Master? Su Yu was secretly surprised. No wonder he was so powerful. He followed suit and bowed. No need to be so polite. Deputy Palace Master Lu smiled. When his gaze swept past Su Yu, he was slightly surprised. It was strange that someone other than the Light Envoy was participating. Such a situation was rarely seen in the previous martial arts championship. It must be a heaven ruler that they had missed. Seeing Su Yu standing behind the Envoy of Light, Deputy Palace Master Lu knew that Su Yu's abilities should be ranked below theirs. Thinking like this, she didn't care much about it. She took out a few ice crystals in the shape of thunderbolts and said, "One for each of you, and instill your blood essence into them. Once you encounter any danger you can't resist inside, just crush it, and you'll be teleported out by the restrictive spell." Understood. Everyone did as they were told. This was a life-saving talisman, and they could not be careless. Also a reminder, other than the wild beasts, we have captured a new batch of criminals. Not only are they strong, but they are also extremely cunning. You must be careful when hunting them. Su Yu's heart was on alert. For Deputy Palace Master Lu to personally warn him, this batch of criminals must be very dangerous. Even though Su Yu had powerful abilities, he did not dare be careless. "Let's go." Deputy Palace Master Lu opened the entrance and let them in. After all of them had entered, one of Deputy Palace Master Lu's confidants asked worriedly, "Deputy Palace Master, is it really okay to let those criminals in? In order to capture them, we lost no less than 3 Patriarch-level powerhouses. The Light Envoys have only cultivated for a short period of time. I'm afraid their abilities are not as good." Hearing this, Deputy Palace Master Lu's brows furrowed. He sighed. "Palace Master, how could you not know? But we cannot take things one step at a time. In a few decades, it will be the great calamity of the world. At that time, everything will be destroyed. The Light Envoys can only train even harder to have the opportunity to enter an 8-star civilization. So, letting them encounter danger is for their own good." Chapter 2298. Hearing the words "calamity of the world," the aide's face was filled with fear. He let out a long, bitter sigh. The end of the era, the destruction of the Holy Mountain. Who can avoid this? Perhaps only the rumored 8-star civilizations had the answer. At least in the outer realms, there was no shelter. Once the end of the era began, every 7-star civilization would be destroyed in an instant. Therefore, all the 7-star civilizations were trying their best to send people to the 8-star civilizations. Some of the 8-star civilizations had promised that if the people they sent reached a satisfactory level, they could use a divine technique to pull the entire civilization into the 8-star civilization and avoid the calamity. Regardless of whether it was the Bright Palace, the Nightless Empire, or the other 7 civilizations, they had spared no effort in sending talents. There were only 80 years left until the destruction of the Holy Mountain. The current batch of Light Envoys was the last batch of geniuses that the Bright Palace could nurture. The Bright Palace had placed its hopes on them, hoping to nurture them to the satisfaction of the 8-star civilizations. Therefore, under the instructions of the Great Palace Master, the danger level of this competition was greatly increased in order to stimulate their potential to the greatest extent. Vice Palace Master Lu looked toward the fog forest, muttering, "I hope they gain something." The fog forest. The moment they entered, the Light Envoys split up, searching for prey alone. Su Yu looked up at the sky, releasing his heavenly eyes to observe from above. His vision was 10 times larger than normal, allowing him to see a range of 100 miles. He chose a direction, searching with the help of his heavenly eyes. Half a day later, Su Yu stopped, standing on a pile of corpses, a look of surprise on his face. The area of the fog forest was not large. In half a day, he should have covered 1/10 of the area. What was bizarre was that during this period of time, not to mention hunting, he didn't even see a single savage beast. Moreover, he had even met Kong Chu, who had not killed a single beast. Strange. With the amount of prey they released, this should not be the case, Su Yu thought. Roar. Suddenly, a thunderous roar came from afar. Su Yu immediately used his heavenly eyes to investigate, discovering that there was movement in a lake 100 miles away. He immediately headed over. Soon, when he was 10 miles away from the lake, Su Yu slowed down. He himself hid behind a giant tree and observed from a close distance with the heavenly eyes. The ripples in the lake did not subside for a long time. At the center of the ripples, a snow-white, long-necked savage beast was currently hunting for food in the lake. Judging from the spiritual pressure emanating from its body, it should be an ordinary Tao Lord savage beast. At this moment, it was happily hunting as if there was no one around it, and it did not notice any danger at all. Su Yu surveyed his surroundings and prepared to capture him. Unexpectedly, a figure flew out a step ahead of him. He used his lightning domain to launch a sneak attack on the long-necked savage beast. The savage beast was shocked. In its panic, it didn't even have the time to use its innate talent before it was enveloped by the boundless domain. After a series of frenzied flashes of lightning and rolls of thunder, the The savage beast let out a miserable shriek and collapsed with a loud bang, causing a huge splash in the air. Zhang Yuan jumped onto the savage beast with a look of delight. "I've finally caught one. It sure wasn't easy." It turned out that it wasn't just Su Yu and Kong Chu, but even Zhang Yuan hadn't been able to capture them. Su Yu's eyes flickered, and he felt that something was amiss. The three of them each chose a direction. They had covered at least 30% of the dense fog forest in half a day, but they had not managed to find anything. Where had the savage beasts gone? Why was there one here all of a sudden? Just as he was deep in thought, the heavenly eyes suddenly projected a strange scene. Deep within the lake, a dark, circular patch of red had appeared, and it kept rising from the bottom of the lake to the surface. The heavenly eyes were able to detect it due to its high vantage point. But Zhang Yuan was oblivious. He was happily storing the savage beast into his space storage artifact. Splash! Suddenly, the sound of water could be heard. An extremely sharp, pitch-black spike shot out from the bottom of the lake, piercing toward Zhang Yuan. Zhang Yuan was caught off guard and could only release his domain in time to resist the black spike. But the spike was extremely dangerous. It completely ignored the domain and headed straight for Zhang Yuan's body. Zhang Yuan was shocked. He could no longer care about the savage beast as he turned to flee. His body brushed past the black spike as he fled back to the shore. Turning his head, he saw a giant savage beast slowly float up from the bottom of the lake. It looked like a horse, but it was 100,000 feet long. On its forehead was a gigantic scarlet eye. There was also a pitch-black horn on its head. Zhang Yuan had nearly been pierced to death by this horn. A family patriarch-level savage beast? Zhang Yuan's scalp tingled as he fled for his life without any hesitation. However, how could Zhang Yuan escape from a family patriarch-level savage beast? Just as he fled for dozens of kilometers, the unicorn caught up to him at lightning speed. The horn on its head emitted an extremely powerful black beam of light. Sensing the intense life-and-death danger, Zhang Yuan crushed the crystal with a look of indignation. Immediately, a beam of light shot out from the restriction, protecting Zhang Yuan within. The black beam of light immediately dissipated when it struck the light. Following that, the light swept Zhang Yuan out of the dense fog forest. Having failed in its pursuit, the unicorn returned to the lake and came before the long-necked savage beast. It lowered its head to treat its injuries. But at that moment, there was a sharp sound of something tearing through the air. Alarmed, the unicorn immediately released a black stream of light from its horn to protect its body. But by the time it heard the sound, a pitch-black arrow had already pierced through its body. The immense force sent its 100,000-foot body flying for hundreds of kilometers, smashing through the forest. Finally, it was pinned to the ground by the seemingly small black arrow as it struggled violently. Swoosh! A human figure descended above its head, looking at it with a thoughtful expression. "You savage beasts know how to set up ambushes." Su Yu had seen Zhang Yuan's predicament clearly from the side. The snow-white savage beast had been used as prey to lure the light emissary. The unicorn had been used as a trump card, hidden in the dark to deal a fatal blow at the critical moment. But the thin spiritual intelligence would not have done such a thing. The unicorn neighed. Other than struggling, it did not understand what Su Yu was asking. Sighing, Su Yu put the unicorn back into his storage space. However, Su Yu did not touch the unconscious, snow-white barbaric beast. Instead, he hid in the dark and observed the savage beast. Half a day later, it finally awoke. It first looked around cautiously. After confirming that there was no one around, it lowered its head and trotted in a certain direction. Su Yu's gaze flickered. There was indeed a problem. He used his invisibility technique to secretly follow it. The snow-white savage beast was very cunning. It circled back and forth a few times, choosing a place to rest, causing others to think that it was just moving about normally. If there was someone secretly following it, they would quickly give up on following it. But Su Yu always believed in his own judgment. Once he made a judgment, he would follow it to the end. Just like that, a few days later, the snow-white savage beast confirmed that it was not being followed and finally sped off in a certain direction. Not long after, it arrived in front of a giant ice mountain filled with caves of all sizes. This ice mountain was the habitat of a creature called the dark snow moon rabbit. But at the moment, there was not a single dark snow moon rabbit, as if they had all been scared away. The snow-white savage beast walked into the heart of the mountain from a larger cave. Deep within the mountain, there were hundreds of savage beasts. Most of them were at the level of a pathmaster, with a few at the level of a family master. When Su Yu secretly followed them to this place, his expression changed. No wonder there were no savage beasts in the mist forest. They were all gathered here. His gaze probed deeper into the heart of the mountain, and he discovered some people. They were not savage beasts, but living creatures of a certain race. There were about 10 of them, and they were from various races. One of them was a green-robed man. His entire body was covered in various beast diagrams. He held a round ball in his hand, and his mouth was continuously speaking in a strange language. The savage beasts looked at the green-robed man with reverence. After the snow-white savage beast entered, it trembled in fear as it approached the green-robed man, telling him what had happened in beast language. The green-robed man understood what the snow-white savage beast was saying through the round ball. He said angrily, "Trash! You let go of the person you have captured. Where is the unicorn? Why did it not return with you?" The snow-white savage beast roared a few times, as if saying that it did not know where the unicorn had gone. "Betray me? Humph." The green-robed man took out an old talisman from his sleeves. There was a drop of the unicorn's blood on it. He stuck the talisman on his body, and a strange scene appeared. The beast diagrams on his body wriggled, as if they were alive, and swallowed the talisman in one gulp. Su Yu, who was hiding in the dark, felt his space storage device tremble slightly. He looked inside and discovered that the injured unicorn had died tragically. That green-robed man is controlling all the savage beasts here? Su Yu's heart trembled. That was almost all the savage beasts. How did he do it? At this moment, Su Yu heard movement behind him. He continued to hide and observe silently. He saw people from various races returning with a group of injured savage beasts. One of the people from one of the races caused Su Yu's heart to tremble violently. He could not believe his eyes. There was a woman who looked like a human among them. She wore a snow-white dress, and her expression was numb. She led an injured savage beast into the cave expressionlessly and said, "This savage beast encountered the third-ranked emissary of light. Not only did it not manage to capture him, but it was almost captured by him." The green-robed man walked over, but he did not look at the injured savage beast. Instead, he looked at the woman with concern. "Yue, are you all right?" The woman named Yue had a cold look in her eyes. "With my cultivation level, how many of the emissaries of light can threaten me? Also, my name is Xiaoxiaoya, not Yue." She was none other than Xiaoxiaoya, whom Su Yu had spared. Unexpectedly, 10 years later, she had become a prisoner of the Palace of Light and had been banished to the hunting grounds. Seeing her, Su Yu felt a myriad of emotions.